Good afternoon, everyone. The time is 5:33 p.m. It is Tuesday, February 6th. I'm going to call this special city council meeting to order. With the city secretary, please call the roll. There's an echo. Do you hear that echo?
Mitchell,
Here.
Rizzo, Heiser, Zuniga,
Present.
Harris,
Here.
Parsley,
Here.
Tobias.
Here.
All right, 5 members present. We have a quorum. Next up is citizen comments period. I do have one registered to speak, but I don't see anyone. Mr. William Daniel Hancock. All right, we'll call him out again at the 7 o'clock meeting. Is there anyone else who wishes to come forward? All right, seeing none, we're going to close citizen comments. It's now closed. Next up is executive session. Councilmember Zuniga.
Pursuant to Chapter 551 Texas Government Code, the City Council reserves the right to convene into executive session from time to time as deemed necessary during this meeting. The City Council may convene into executive session pursuant to any lawful exception contained in Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code, including any or all of the following topics: pending or contemplated litigation, settlement agreement, or to seek the advice of the city attorney and attorneys concerning legal issues pursuant to Section 551.071 Texas Government Code and Section 1.05 Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct, various lobbyist and strategic advocacy contracts, RFQ 2023-40-PARD, possible purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate pursuant to Section 551.072, to deliberate the purchase of real property for public purpose, purchase of property for city facilities and public purposes, acquisition of property for transportation, improvements and related infrastructure, Center Street Village wastewater line easement, Cypress Road utilities easement, Kyle Parkway and Lehman Extension right-of-way, Quill Ridge drainage assessment. Convene into executive session pursuant to Section 551.087 Texas Government Code to deliberate regarding the offer of economic incentives to one or more business prospects that the city seeks to have locate, stay, or expand in or near the city. Project Two-Step, Project Sahara. Take action on items discussed in executive session.
Good evening, everyone. There was no action taken during executive session. There will be no action taken now. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we are adjourned. All right, good evening. The time is 7:06 p.m. It is Tuesday, February the 6th, and I'm going to call this regularly scheduled city council meeting to order. Would all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the city secretary please call the roll?
Mitchell,
Here.
Rizzo,
Present.
Heiser,
Here.
Zuniga,
Present.
Harris,
Here.
Parsley,
Here.
Tobias.
Present.
All right, all members are accounted for. We have a quorum. Next up, approval of the minutes.
Mayor, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve the minutes for the regular council meeting from January 16th, 2024, and the special meeting as well, same date.
Second.
All right, motion by Councilmember Tobias, seconded by Councilmember Harris that we approve the minutes. Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0. Next up is citizen comments. At this time, we ask anyone in the audience who wishes to come forward and speak on any item to please do so. We do ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes and that you direct those comments to the mayor and council. We also ask that you fill out a public comments form and submit that to either myself or the city secretary. I have 2 who have registered to speak. First up is Ellen Ermis.
Thank you. I've left a monthly calendar for each of y'all in the newsletter for the Kyle Area Senior Zone. I am their communications director. I wanted to point out a few things. We're celebrating our 18th birthday as a nonprofit. We had several dignitaries join us for lunch and an article in the Austin American Statesman. Subaru has a new City Limits Subaru. They awarded us 242 new coats and shoes for school children. We worked with the school district to distribute those on the 25th, and we're distributing at Lehman High School tonight. We've been working on a Peace and Harmony quilt, which will be displayed out here February 12th through 23rd, and then it'll move to Buda for their outdoor Black History Month. We have a grant from the Texas Commission for Arts. They have funded 4 Tejano bands once a month, January, February, March, April. The last Friday, we had Los Pinkies. Last month, we'll have Cruz Sante this month. We also have a Patsy Cline tribute concert on the 18th. We appreciate your support and look forward to working with you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Next up, I have William Daniel Hancock.
Greetings, Mr. Mayor, council representatives, and staff. A couple of weeks ago, we visited the Kyle Library, and the parking lot was just jammed. So I went inside, and there was a meeting, and I talked to the people at the meeting, and they're pretty polite, and they were civil, and said it was a Democratic meeting, which is fine, nothing against the Democratic Party, but I'm not sure if the library should be used for political meetings. And it would be just as bad if it was the Republicans. We're entering a contentious political year, so the library should probably stay out of politics. And then one of the members of the Democratic Club said that, well, Republicans will get their turn too. And I've been going to the library pretty consistently, except for like COVID. And this was the first political meeting that I've seen at the library. So even if it's open to both Democrats and Republicans, what about the people that don't like both political parties? And there's quite a few of those. So I don't think the library should subsidize the political parties by providing a meeting place. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are all the citizen comments forms that I have. Is there anyone else who wishes to come forward? Ms. Westbrook.
Greetings. I'm Vanessa Westbrook, Kyle resident. I would like to express my sincere admiration to Dr. Miguel Zuniga, Council Member District 3, for his inspirational words to the young people who presented, volunteered, and attended the Martin Luther King Jr. celebration on January 28th at the Performance Arts Center in Kyle. The event's program featured high school juniors and seniors as presenters and performers from the 3 high schools in our district, along with students, parents, citizens, and local and state elected officials was the makeup of the folks at this event. Dr. Zuniga is a great role model for our students in so many ways. Thank you, Dr. Zuniga.
Thank you.
And while I have you on the line, I discovered a teachable moment as a teacher for many, many years. This evening I was looking at the agenda, and I wanted to talk a little bit about President's Day. President's Day is observed annually on the 3rd month in February. In 2024, President's Day will be celebrated on Monday, February the 19th. In a sense, calling the holiday President's Day helps us to reflect on all of the U.S. presidents. The month of February alone, there are 4 presidents who have had birthdays. Ronald Reagan, February 6th, William Harrison, February 9th, Abraham Lincoln, February 12th, and George Washington, February the 22nd. Now, as opposed to observing presidents' birthdays each month across the nation, in 1968, Congress passed the Monday Holiday Law to provide uniform and an annual observance of legal holidays for creating, spiritual and economic life of the nation. Now, would individual observations bring forward good and bad points of these humans in regards to history, such as Ronald Reagan, who had peacetime economic growth and stagflation, look that up. William Harrison, who was a military colonel, general in the War of 1812, and he owned slaves while he was president of the United States, of America at the time. Abraham Lincoln, Emancipation Proclamation, but he also suspended the writ of habeas corpus to Americans. And then George Washington, the first American president and a owner of 123 slaves while serving and retiring as president. Now, one thing for sure, the financial institutions, most government agencies, and retails appreciate the third Monday in February, if you catch my drift. Now, February is Black History Month throughout the United States, as communities and citizens celebrate the contributions of African Americans, contributions to America. Much has happened or will happen in Hays County this month for this month-long celebration. I hope that you have your calendar set to attend some of these events. Just wanted to share a teachable moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Westbrook. Is there anyone else who wishes to come forward? All right, seeing none, we're going to close citizen comments. It's now closed. All right, next up is agenda order. Does anybody have any suggestions to move any of the items around? All right, seeing none, we're going to move on to appointments. Consider approval of a minute order approving the appointment of Lize Challis to the Trails Committee. Ms. Espinoza. I've never heard minute order.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Mariana Espinoza, Parks and Recreation Director. So the Trails Committee, as you know, was formed in July of last year. Originally, we had 17 applicants for the Trails Committee. We interviewed 13, and 7 committee members were appointed. We currently have 1 vacancy. So staff would like to recommend the appointment of Lize Challis. Lize has lived in the city of Kyle for just over a year. She is a civil engineer, and she has a ton of experience with mountain biking committees and the mountain biking community. She has worked on a trail in South Africa that was 112 miles long for just mountain biking specifically. So she's been to our meetings just as a citizen to listen in, and so we'd like to recommend approval of Lize Challis.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Motions?
Move approval of Lize Challis to the Trails Committee.
Second.
All right, motion by Councilmember Harris, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem, that we approve Ms. Challis to the Trails Committee. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0. Thank you. All right, next up is consider approval of a minute order. Spelled the same. I don't know what a minute order is either. Consider approval of a minute order appointing Dr. Eric Wright, Superintendent of Hays CISD, Julie Snyder, CEO of the Chamber, Cassidy Berenato, Vice President of Texas Aviation Partners San Marcos Regional Airport, and Mike Commerlander with the GSMP as ex officio members of the Economic Development and Tourism Board. Ms. Vargas.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Victoria Vargas, Director of Economic Development for the record. I have our Vice Chair here to present this item to you, as our Chair was not present at the meeting, but we have Luke Miller here, the Vice Chair, to present the item on behalf of the Board.
Thank you, Victoria. Good evening, Mayor and Council, here to present on your behalf, or to you, rather, as Vice Chair of the Economic Development and Tourism Board. As y'all are well aware, we've recently had some structural changes in the ED&T board to increase representation from stakeholders within the city of Kyle, most notably requiring 5 out of the 7 members to live within the city of Kyle. The Code of Ordinances does allow the ED&T board to recommend to appointment no more than 5 ex officio members. And at the most recent meeting, we went through some thorough discussion on how best to serve the council, and as an ED&T board, what stakeholders within the community would best represent additional interests. And that is really what's before you today. The ED&T board recommends the appointment of Dr. Eric Wright, Superintendent of Hays CISD, Julie Snyder, CEO of the Kyle Area Chamber of Commerce, Cassidy Berenato, Vice President of Texas Aviation Partners, San Marcos Regional Airport, and finally, Mike Camerlander, CEO of GSMP. In addition, we will seek out a representative from higher education to fill the remaining seat. We are evaluating an opportunity for ACC Kyle to be an additional ex officio member. So the options before the council this evening are: first, approve the appointment of all the recommended ex officio members; two, deny the appointment; or three, approve the appointment of some of the recommended ex officio members.
All right.
So I'll pause there if there's any
Yeah,
questions.
thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Motions?
I move appointment of all the recommended ex officio members to the committee.
Second.
All right, that motion's made by Councilmember Harris, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem, that we approve these members to the board as ex officios. Is there a discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right.
Thank you.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much for coming. All right, next up, reports and presentations. Agenda item number 5, introduction of new city attorney Aimee Alcorn-Reed. Mr. Langley.
Yes, sir. I wanted to take a moment to introduce the council and public to our new city attorney, Aimee Alcorn-Reed. Aimee comes to us from the city of Corpus Christi, where she has served as assistant city attorney for many years, and we're very glad to welcome Aimee to the position. This is her second day, so we couldn't think of any other way to indoctrinate her other than bringing her to our council meeting tonight, but we appreciate Aimee and look forward to serving with her. So thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Does anybody have anything they want to say? We're just recognizing that we're a growing city. I know you come highly regarded, so we're happy to have you. Obviously, as the city grows like ours, you know, the legal nuances that we have to, you know, and paths that we have to navigate continue to grow. So excited to see you come forward and help us solve problems on a daily basis. So.
Thank you. Very happy to be part of the team.
Awesome. Any other comments? All right. Next up, agenda item number 6, proclamation recognizing George Washington's birthday. Councilmember Parsley. Uh-oh. Heiser was slow to sign.
All right, City Council proclamation. I left my glasses in the car, sorry. Whereas the United States of America was established following the War of Revolution from 1776 to 1783, a war won through brilliant and courageous leadership of George Washington, revered father of our nation. And whereas George Washington, who lived from 1732 to 1799, mobilized the Continental Army and led the American colonies against the most powerful country in the world, finally defeating the British and famous Battle of Georgetown, Virginia. And whereas this revered founder of our nation resisted the efforts of many supporters to make him a king or dictator, instead using his influence and power to support the creation and adoption of the Constitution of the United States. And whereas George Washington was elected as the first president of the United States, serving 2 terms of office from 1789 to 1797, and through his devotion, wisdom, and vision became the exemplar of distinguished leadership for all future presidents. And whereas the William Hightower chapter of the Sons of America Revolution and the local DAR chapter, if a co-sponsor wish to encourage all citizens to recognize the epochal contribution of George Washington to our nation by celebrating his birth on Thursday, February 22nd, 2024. Now, therefore, I, Daniel Parsley, by virtue of the authority vested in me as a council member of the City of Kyle, do hereby proclaim February 22nd, 2024 as President George Washington's Day. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I believe we have someone dressed.
Picture?
Yeah, we can.
If you would like to come forward.
All right, I would like to get a photo of council.
on the count of three. 1, 2, 3. All right.
No.
You don't have it memorized? No. It's very long. All right, next up is a proclamation recognizing Black History Month. Councilmember Tobias.
All right, thank you. Again, it's an honor to read this again. I think this is the second year in a row I'll be able to do this. To have the honor to read this year's 2024 Black History Month proclamation from the city. So whereas reviewing the history of Black History Month, which started as an idea for the ways to celebrate achievement and contributions of African Americans in the United States. In 1924, Negro Achievement Week began and the outreach was significant, but the desire for a greater impact also persisted. By February 1926, historian Dr. Carter G. Woodson, along with other prominent African American figures, designed a new name, Negro History Week. Dr. Woodson chose February for reasons of continuing what was already familiar to many. Since 1865, Black communities in the United States had celebrated fallen President Abraham Lincoln's birthday, February 12th, and then by the late 1890s, former slave and prominent abolitionist activist Frederick Douglass' birthday, February 14th. This showed his true effort to extend the study of Black history and not create a new tradition. Finally, in 1976, during George Gerald Ford's administration, this celebration was expanded to include the entire month of February, and today, Black History Month garners support throughout the country as people of all ethnic and social backgrounds discuss the African American experience. And whereas the city of Kyle takes pride in its African American heritage, this can also be seen in Kyle within the entire scale of history, from the enslaved people and its founding to the courageous freedmen who settled in the area after the end of slavery in June 1865, and from the early traders representing businesses in Kyle to those who served and represented this growing community in various capacities, including publicly elected offices, like former city council members Mattie Welch, Ray Bryant, Dex Ellison, and former Mayor James Atkins. And whereas the city of Kyle encourages the preservation of our African American history and applauds the efforts of local groups as well as local individuals in helping restore, preserve, and maintain Kyle historic locations such as the African American Cemetery, Kyle Family Pioneer Cemetery, which has received a state historical marker in 2020. And whereas the city of Kyle joins in the unified endeavor of its community members around Hays County in paying homage to those who have helped carry on the resolute efforts in the continued reminder of achievements and sacrifices by African Americans, men and women, who have contributed to the advancement of human civilization. And whereas this year's theme, African American and the Arts, exploring the key influence African Americans have had in the fields of visual and performing arts, literature, fashion, folklore, language, film, music, architecture, culinary, and other forms of cultural expression. These various genres have arts and united communities from all walks of life, brought to light abuses of civil rights, violations of African Americans and other underserved citizens, along with promoting peaceful protests for over 2 centuries. Historically and today, in the 21st century, African Americans have worked the political angle to seek the rightful space in this country, and consistently pushed the United States to live up to its ideals of freedom, liberty, and justice for all American citizens. Now, therefore, it be proclaimed the City of Kyle that February 1st through March 1st, 2024, be celebrated as Black History Month in appreciation of the many achievements of Kyle's African American community and those across this nation and its history. And just wanted to reiterate again, thank you for allowing me to do this. I know at first, Councilman Parsley and I, or Councilman Parsley will do it, but gave me the honor to read this out one more time. And to all the people that are here in the audience, our guests of honor that are here, want to welcome the Glee Club, the Key Club of Layman that's here. We also have School Board Trustee Johnny Flores is here, and Stephanie Murray, and of course, Dr. Vanessa Westbrook. Again, thank you for your help and your guidance, help in writing this proclamation. It's really appreciated. And to all the other special guests, including Sheila Henderson, who was also on our dialogue last year, the years before. She was one of the contributing speakers on that end. And to all the community that's here, I just want to say thank you for your continued support. It is truly an honor to be able to present this proclamation for the people of our city. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you. And yes, if you don't mind, I would like to have a photo for this remembrance.
Anyone from the audience would like to come forward for the photo also?
More council back here.
I'm going to scooch this back.
That's gonna be a big crowd.
Yes, it is. Y'all go on forward. I'll push this back. Squeeze really close together like you all like each other a lot. Oh, okay, that's not saying. I can't see the munchkin on the side. There we go. All right. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Perfect.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for coming, Sheila. Love you too. Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you for being here. Mr. Flores, thank you.
You have to check if it's all signed. Yeah. Thank you very much. And Mayor, if I could also just do a reminder, we are also having the continued discussions. The Peace and Progress will be next week, I believe, on February the 15th, Thursday, starting at 7 p.m. here at the City Hall.
Okay. All right. Next up is a proclamation recognizing Dating Violence Awareness Month. Councilor Heiser, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. For far too long, the topic of dating violence and domestic violence was something you discussed quietly, if at all. I'm sure there are people in this room who've been directly affected by domestic violence or dating violence, whether it's you yourself or someone you love. While this country has made significant progress in addressing this issue, domestic violence and dating violence still is far too prevalent. I'm thankful for the steps we've taken to shine a light on this issue. No longer is this issue discussed quietly. It's become a topic that's really front and center. But now we must work together to continue to raise awareness, to promote healthy relationships, and to be willing to have difficult conversations with those we love. Eradicating domestic violence starts at home, at school, and within our communities. And I'd like to encourage every single person in this room to be an advocate for those who are affected. Please, if you see something, say something. Now, therefore, I, Bear Heiser, by virtue of the authority vested in me as council member of the city of Kyle, Texas, do hereby proclaim the month of February 2024 is Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month. Would Genesis, would you like to come up so we can take a picture? And Sandra? Yeah? Can we go take a picture?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm gonna take two different phone photos, John. Immediately disperse. Count to three. 1, 2, 3. All right, grab the second phone real quick. On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Perfect, thank y'all.
Advocate with HCWC serving Hays and Caldwell County. Thank you to the mayor and members of the Kyle City Council for recognizing February as Dating Violence Awareness Month. HCW staff and board would like to sincerely thank you for your time and effort in helping support the fight against dating violence. In 2023, HCWC served 31 dating violence prevention and healthy relationship presentations to 2,428 teens and young adults. Each year, the demand continues to rise as not only our population grows, but also the community's increased awareness and compassion for survivors of domestic violence. Thank you for being a part of that change.
We are active on social media, so if anyone out there is watching and would like to learn more about this, especially the dating violence, we have our website, which is hcwc.org, as well as Stop the Hurt. And stopthehurt.org is actually more geared towards the dating violence and the younger population, but there's a lot of information, including podcasts and stuff like that, articles, etc. And I also want to remind you that I believe it's May 18th, I believe it's in May this year, our annual auction is coming up. It is going to be at Texas State University. It's our biggest fundraiser, one of several, but that one is our biggest fundraiser. And please check our website for updates, as well as the Putnam Golf Tournament. That is probably scheduled for April. I know the website doesn't have anything there yet, but please keep a lookout because it's a lot of fun and it also helps us to fund our programs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is agenda item number 9, a proclamation recognizing spay neuter awareness. Councilmember Zuniga.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This agenda item is to announce that February is Spay and Neuter Awareness Month. And I'd also like to say thank you to Sherry Boyette, all the Friends of Pals and Paws, and the San Marcos Animal Shelter for supporting our pets and for being here tonight. Whereas, as of 2023, 66% of U.S. households, 86.9 million homes own a pet. And whereas in 2022, the number of pets that entered shelters nationally was 4.4 million, which was an increase of 1.6% over 2021. Shelter animals are euthanized in the U.S. every year because of the lack of resources, and millions of animals are left homeless, living on streets or housed in shelters. And whereas about 378,000 dogs and cats were killed in our nation's shelters just because they didn't have safe places to call home. And whereas more cats than dogs are euthanized annually, while dogs and cats entered shelters at about an equal rate, cats made up 55% of the killing, while dogs were 45%. And whereas 567,000 companion animals entered Texas animal shelters, and 68,945 dogs and cats were killed in animal shelters across Texas in 2022. And whereas 22 million pets are living in the U.S. underserved communities, of which 88% are not spayed or neutered, leaving them open to reproducing and adding to the overpopulation problem. And whereas spay and neuter initiatives reduce incidents of homeless animals, certain life-threatening diseases, and even curb negative behavior. And whereas the regional animal shelter reported there were 3,053 live dogs and cats impounded in fiscal year 2023, of which 36%, 1,109 animals, were from Hays County. And whereas the City Council, in support of the No-Kill initiative, endorses responsible pet ownership and encourages the community to fix their pets to curb the number of pets which may become homeless, stray, or enter the regional animal shelter. And whereas spay and neuter of pets and trap, neuter, vaccinate, return of unknown community cats are an integral components of the no-kill equation. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the City Council of the City of Kyle that the month of February 2024 be recognized as Spay Neuter Awareness Month, signed and entered this 6th day of February. Also like to give just some friendly tips, and also thank our animal control officers for being here. Please get spay and neuter vouchers from the City of Kyle if you're able to do so online, or from any other municipality that offers them, or from PALS. Secondly, please keep pets indoors or outdoors if you must, but in safe conditions. And third, most importantly, if you're able to, please consider donating or adopting a pet from the San Marcos Animal Shelter. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Councilman Reed.
We have people here, yeah. Announce it. Yep. So anyone who would like to take a photo with us?
Okay, maybe right after the photo, since we already have everyone down off the dais. Councilmember Zuniga, I think she wanted to make some comments, if that's okay, after the photo. All right, y'all, if y'all will scooch in real close so I can get y'all all in. Be a little bit further back. All right, we might need a couple layers. Sorry, just a little bit closer. All right. 1, 2, 3. All right, perfect. Thank y'all.
Those were a lot of statistics.
Hi, I'm Lauren Foy. I'm the current president of PALS, Pet Prevent Litter of Central Texas, that is located in downtown San Marcos. We are a Hays County nonprofit, low-cost and free voucher spay and neuter animal hospital. We are here to serve the citizens of Kyle, and I'm super thankful for you guys doing this proclamation to let our citizens know that February is Spay and Neuter Month, and that you guys support PALS and the citizens to get their animals spayed and neutered. So thank you for partnering with us. Last year we did about 5,400 animals, and this year we are fingers crossed, going to be able to almost double that, and that's with help from you guys. And I just wanted to just extend my gratitude for you guys to supporting PALS and this proclamation. We also have a big fundraiser. It's April 19th. It's called the Sock Hop Gala. It's for cool cats and poodle skirts. So if anybody wants to come do a fun gala and raise money for PALS, please go on our website and look for our upcoming fundraiser on April 19th. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you. All right, thank you. All right, next up is agenda item number 10, receive a report, hold discussion, provide staff feedback on the City of Kyle's plans and procedures to follow during emergency weather events and partnership and collaboration with neighboring entities. Chief Barnett.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jeff Barnett, Chief of Police, for the record. Thank you for allowing us to present to you tonight an updated emergency response preparedness plan for the City of Kyle. You'll see that we're here to address both the current city operations, as well as to discuss our future operations and plans, and as well to, most importantly, seek your input and seek your guidance on a few key topics. While we're here, you may recall that the City Council had a robust discussion at your most recent City Council meeting on January the 16th, where Council and City staff discussed the City's preparation and response to city emergencies. At that time, the City Council directed the City Manager to provide an update on the City's plans and procedures to follow during an emergency situation such as a weather event, as well as the planned partnerships and collaboration that would be utilized during such event. I will be presenting the outline this evening, guided by the PowerPoint presentation, and I'm accompanied tonight by the directors who serve as subject matter experts in their respective areas. In addition to the guidance from Assistant City Manager Jerry Hendricks and Assistant City Manager Amber Spots, you will see Harper Wilder, Director of Public Works, Rachel Saunier, Director of Communications, and William Patabosh, our Emergency Management Coordinator. They're all here and available to expand upon any key area. Tonight, under the current procedures, we are going to cover the preventative measures, responsive actions, and in detailed fashion, shelter and center activations, and importantly, communications with the community, the staff, and city leadership. Following that, we will cover future plans, discussing the items that staff is currently working on, as well as discussing and specifically requesting your input on several key areas. The City of Kyle is currently a signatory on the Hays County Emergency Operations Plan. We partner with Hays County. We work well with them. We follow a guided plan that will assist us during emergency operations. Among the many components of this plan are expectations for pre-planning, response, and recovery. The four items that you see here are general terms that are used during an emergency response, and they help emergency management planners and city staff members both plan in advance and respond to an emergency situation. You see that the four terms are planning, mitigation, response, and recovery. Preparedness, as you can imagine, is the constant and ongoing pursuit, evolving and improving with resources, technology, training, and experience. Mitigation would be the actions taken to prevent or reduce the impact of potential disasters in the future. Response, as you would expect, is how we respond to an emergency, with what equipment, with what training, and what procedures we respond. Smaller incidents and larger incidents certainly take various types of resources, and this is how we respond to those emergencies based on that training and expectations. Lastly, recovery, which does begin during the emergency, but may continue much longer and much beyond the actual event. Preventative measures that I want to talk to you about tonight, you will see the categories that we've identified are streets, water, wastewater, shelter and center plans and procedures, communications, as well as emergency operations center activation. There are multiple city functions that take place that we've identified, but we want to talk about these tonight in the terms that mentioned above and also get your input. Speaking for streets specifically, winter weather events. This is when they're going to have snow and ice potentially or expected, or it is incoming. They have three key components to their planning and response. You see preparation, where days prior to the event, they have their trucks ready, they have their equipment ready, they're loaded with the salt, they're placed strategically throughout the community, and everything is charged and ready to go. They are ready for that event. The response for a winter weather event for streets is that on-call and essential staff physically report to work. They come in early ahead of the event. They may apply some of the materials that you see on the slide. They may apply salt. They may apply sand. And in some cases, if need be, they may remove some snow buildup from the roadways if they can do so safely without damaging our streets. And then afterwards, you'll see that there's monitoring, constant monitoring by the Public Works staff members as well as police department staff who are constantly feeding information into city management and making sure that everyone's aware of what is safe and when it is not, and what conditions we have out on the roadways. For a heavy rainfall and flooding event, again, for the streets department, they prepare for those as well, days early with staffing where they fuel their trucks, have their equipment ready and proactively cleaned and maintained for the city's drainage ways and the ponds to ensure that they hold and release water as designed. They maintain drainage to clean up any articles, debris, or anything else that may impede the flow of water. They may even place some barricades out throughout the community so that they are strategically located and quickly available if necessary. And they have their staff ready to respond even after hours, ahead of an event. They're basically on call. They'll come in up on a moment's notice, and they'll come in early ahead of an event if we have that kind of notice. Again, in this same situation, the monitoring is done by a variety of staff members, but the Public Works staff and the police department staff are intentionally driving throughout the community looking for flooded or potentially flooded roadways. Moving to the next topic of wastewater and water for winter weather and heavy rainfall events. Kind of follows the same scheme. They're prepping in advance. They're paying attention to all of the incoming information. They're getting all of their equipment ready. A little more specifically for them, however, is they do have some generators, some permanent generators are fueled and ready to go. At facilities where there are no permanent generators, they have temporary generators that they have access to. Yes, sir.
Sorry, Chief, didn't want to cut you off. With the roadways that flood, do we have historical data of the roads that tend to flood the fastest, the easiest?
Yes.
Do we have monitoring there as the primary location first, like Bunton Creek, I guess Lake Layman Road?
So I'm going to tell you, we do from a boots on the ground standpoint because we know where to go and where to keep an eye on and check.
Right.
I don't think we have any particular equipment that's out there monitoring it like you might have in the rivers and streams, but we do with a boots on the ground approach.
So the focus is on where you know the flooding will occur first.
Yes, sir.
Right? Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. In addition to their response, we were talking about generators. They have temporary generators that they'll allocate, and they'll get those on board ahead of time if necessary. Their response is similar to the streets. It's with the calling in of staff, the prepping of staff, having them ready, having their facilities inspected, their systems are adjusted and made aware of the current weather conditions. Generators are prepared and then put into use when necessary. And there's a constant and ongoing monitoring that takes place of all water and wastewater equipment and facilities. We'll talk about this particular topic several times tonight, but this is current events, and I wanted to talk to you about shelter and centers. Because it's super important to understand how we use the terminology without being too particularly detailed. A shelter is something that is more long-term. It is providing generally overnight shelter. It is a place where people are going to come and stay. They're going to be taken care of for a much longer period of time. They may have in a shelter a place to sleep. They're going to provide meals. There's a registration process. There are reunification services. There are shower and restroom facilities available for everyone. And again, shelters are longer in duration. These are going to run overnight, may run several days, in fact. A center, however, as I go through the presentation, I want to clarify. A center is a short-term operation. A center is designed to keep people out, perhaps, of some extreme weather conditions. Those are operated during normal operating hours of the facility. They're not extended overnight. They're not extended throughout closed weekend hours. There's no mass care services provided. Not meals are not included. Showers and such are not included as well. But in terms of shelters long-term, you're going to get to spend the night, stay there, and be well cared for. A center is a place basically to get out of the weather for a short-term duration during the normal operations of that facility. The city does not currently have an adopted threshold to initiate a center or a shelter. What we would do today in current operating procedures is we would rely on our partnership and that emergency management plan that I mentioned earlier with Hays County. That would be utilized to implement a shelter. The county plan has already negotiated and worked with our partners throughout the community to provide long-term shelters. I think I may have them identified. Yeah, I do have them identified down in here. But shelters, as I mentioned, the longer-term ones, we do not have specifics on when and how to open them. They're basically decided upon the totality of the circumstances. Very similar to a center plan and procedure based on the totality of the circumstances. But things that we could consider would be the temperature, duration, is there a power outage in the community, what type and how much of our population is affected, and what services are needed by the community. Facilities that can be used as centers and shelters, you will see that Hays County has those agreements in place, primarily with schools and with churches to serve as shelters. City facilities that could be used as a center, the short term, would be the Kyle Public Library and the Krug Activity Center, based on emergency events and conditions that may arise in our community. Our Parks and Recreation staff are trained and are ready to serve as staff for shelters and centers if there's thus operated by the city. And then we would partner with the county to provide them any assistance as necessary per the plan that we discussed. There'll be more on that as we go through some slides. Communications, an extremely important part of our procedures for the city. Obviously, we want to make sure that we get good information, vetted information, both to city leadership as well as to the community. So you can see that our communications department, Rachel and her team, they draft messages based on incoming vetted information. They make certain that that is reviewed by key staff members and people with critical information, and then that is sent out to city council and leadership and then provided to our city as quickly as possible. The city uses a variety of available opportunities to communicate with our public. You can see we have here listed on a couple of our options. We have the city website where we try to post all of our information. You can see that it includes things like boil water notices and water events. We also use Warren Central Texas, a program called Everbridge Alerts. That's the kind of alert that you get perhaps in the middle of the night when there is an impending emergency. They are, in fact, I think I have on here, they're actually limited to emergency use only. They're not for general information, and I'll talk more about that in a minute, but that's when you get a telephone call from the Everbridge system. We also use the other social media components that the city operates, such as Facebook, Nextdoor, Twitter, and all the others. We also would use our email system so that we could directly notify certain neighborhoods, HOAs, with other types of information. And again, we try to share that information across that spectrum to make sure that we're reaching the largest population possible as quickly as possible. The Emergency Operations Center. As part of our Public Safety Center development, where the police department is housed, we also included an Emergency Operations Center. That center would be activated during an emergency event that particularly is going to be longer term in nature. It's where we need to get all of our city staff directors together. We need to get city leadership. We need to get you, mayor and council, to a location to where we can provide you very timely information, make certain that we have you together to make important decisions when necessary, and immediately located right next to you. As we go through these training sessions and awareness sessions in the coming weeks, you're going to see that there's a lot of work going on in the Emergency Operations Center, and there's a lot of decision-making and sharing of information with our city leaders in the room adjacent to that center so that we can get you very timely information, as we know you want to share that with your constituents, and we need you to help us make some big decisions and work very well with the city manager. You can see, as you see the chart here, you kind of see how the group operates. We have a series of staff and functions that go on in that room, and we'll talk about that more. Future plans. That's currently what we're doing in those key areas. I want to make sure that we share some future plans, things that we already have in the works. Again, it's for those, the key topics that were identified were the streets. We want to discuss, or we want to share with you some information on backup generators, again, talk about shelters and centers as we move forward, communications, and donations. Streets, for example. The city manager has directed staff to acquire some materials in advance as we move forward, so this is part of our future planning. The streets department will be acquiring some brine, which is applied prior to a winter weather event where freezing temperatures and moisture are expected. Currently, the city doesn't have the equipment, the storage, and the application facilities to provide brine on our roadways. The estimated cost at this point is $25,000. Staff's been directed to make those purchases and get some additional equipment for salting and sanding as well. So they are constantly trying to improve their ability to serve the city on the roadways, again with brine, additional salt, sand, and the equipment necessary to place that when necessary. Backup generators. I think there's an item on your consent agenda tonight that you will discuss approving a preliminary engineering report for the placement of some generators at critical facilities. That would include City Hall, water and wastewater facilities where you currently have no backup power. We do have some temporary generators that are on standby or that we have access to. Those plans are already in place, and the city will reach out to those vendors and suppliers anytime necessary in the event of a pending emergency. The Public Safety Center, as I mentioned a minute ago, is where we have our EOC, and it does have an adequate generator that powers key areas of the building. Not the entire building, but it does do key areas of the building so we can continue operations. Permanent generators power source at critical facilities. The cost for preliminary engineering services to 30% is about $130,000 with an estimated total cost, this is a bit staggering, but at $3 million, I think, so far. So something to be ready for and to be ready to talk about. Shelter plans and procedures. Continuing with our future operations, I want to return to the topic of shelters for a moment, remembering that these operations are longer in duration, require much more in terms of staffing and operational resources, including the facilities with the necessary power, sufficient space, adequate heating and cooling during weather extremes, and other items that we've previously discussed. Hays County and the previously mentioned Emergency Operations Plan, they designate established agreements that are already in place should the need for sheltering be implemented. The Hays County Plan has various facilities identified throughout the county specifically for that purpose, and they meet the requirements as I outlined above. Currently, the city does not have facilities that would qualify for sheltering and overnight services. Going forward, the city could choose to consider adding potential shelter space in any future facilities if that was something that you desired to do so. Center plans and procedures. City buildings that are currently recommended for centers, again, these are the short-term relief, generally from weather conditions, are identified as the Krug Center as well as the public library mentioned. Both of these are centrally located near downtown, and they would be opened and operated during normal operating hours. Some of the things that we want to talk to you about tonight as we seek your guidance and input, and we nail down the ability to bring you a policy in the near future, one that you can support and believe in and know that your staff will execute with your guidance, will be to talk about temperatures. How do we want to implement a center for extreme temperatures, for example? You'll see here that we've plugged in some numbers of 110 degrees, and I'm going to call that the experienced temperature. Not the actual temperature, but experienced when you bring in all the other factors of humidity and whatnot. You can talk about the number of hours. What's the duration for that experienced temperature to be when you would expect a center to be opened? And then same thing for cold weather. We've got some low temperatures in there and the number of hours. We've got it set at 30 degrees right now for a potential policy question. And then a duration of 8 hours or longer. But again, all these are talking points as we move forward towards a policy that you support. I do want to mention that when you use, as you can understand, if we open these centers or we operate our current library or Krug Center for centers, then obviously normal operations would be suspended or impacted with that, and they would become that center for that duration. Communications, again, future plans. Currently, we're using the Everbridge program that I mentioned, kind of like a 911, reverse 911 type system. We get that free of charge from CapCog. The city currently does not incur a cost with that. Communications is pricing something that I think you'll like called Civic Plus. Civic Plus is a system that we would pay for, but it is much more amenable to sharing messages. It's an opt-in system, but much more amenable to sharing additional information with our community. Right now, Everbridge is limited to impending emergencies, things that are happening now or they're about to happen and they're critical in nature, emergencies only.
Chief, do you have to get approval on the Everbridge system before you send something out? Like, do you have to send a copy of that to someone at the COG?
We do not. We do not.
But you just have to follow guidelines.
Have to follow their guidelines, and they're very specific. And here's the purpose behind that. They do, because of that system used for emergencies only, they do not want you to use that system too frequently for events that are not emergencies, because people they won't answer it, they won't listen to the call, they'll say, oh, it's another small matter that doesn't really have a pending emergency. So they want it for true emergencies where people need to react. So yes, sir, we're very limited in it, and they can take it away if we violate that. The Civic Plus system, which has a current estimated cost you can see there of about $12,000 a year, could be used for the city or by the city to share all kinds of messages with the community. It could be things such as utility service disruptions, could be basic community news that's important that we want to share, could be about road closures and other things that are currently not allowed on the Everbridge system. But this is another communications channel that our communications department is currently looking at, they're vetting that, and it could be another opportunity for the city to share more information. Donations, that brings us to the topic of donations. Donations, while very well-meaning, can often be a very labor-intensive and sometimes ineffective project at providing meaningful assistance to the community. Inasmuch, there are service organizations that specialize in this type of assistance. Specifically, the United Way has expressed the ability and the interest in providing such services to the city in time of need. Our emergency management coordinator, Mr. Patabosh, is currently working on securing a service agreement for your review in the near future, where United Way would come in and assist the city when requested to manage a donations program. Donations management is a big undertaking, and it requires space, it requires the cataloging, the eventual dissemination of products or of donations, and then whatever's left over, you also have to work with that on property management. So it's a big operation, and when it occurs simultaneously with an emergency, it can also exhaust some of your staff because it takes a good number of resources to work that program. The city currently has no particular plans to directly facilitate donations, but we would rather secure that agreement with those professionals who do that and have that working arrangement available to us as needed. But we would certainly bring that back to you in the future, as that's just a negotiated agreement that he's looking at. Next steps. So the things that we talked about, there are several key areas where we know we want to get your input, we want to get your guidance, we want to understand what your expectations of staff are. We want to be prepared for emergencies. We care about our community and our citizens, and we want to make sure that we have adequately staffed or trained staff members, and then that they are adequately equipped, and that they are adequately given the right policies and procedures under which to operate, so that they're doing exactly what you want them to do with the right equipment and the right people in the right timing. So certainly I know that we're going to have discussions, whether that's now or later, about how to bring you back a policy within the guidelines that you want, just highlighting some of those things. When do you expect us to open up a center, for example? That tends to be a good key question even for staff. How do we know what that threshold is? If there is a threshold, is there an identifiable number? Or do you want us to take in the totality of the circumstances or whatnot? But it would be better if we had some definitive guidelines from you. It would certainly help staff, help our city manager make sure we're doing the actions in the will of the council. With that said, I've spoken for quite a bit. I'll stop and pause, take questions, and my experts are in the back.
All right, thanks, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, Chief, starting off with, I've got several questions. Starting with the first one is the drainage. That's something that, with the weather pattern that we're currently in right now, we've seen quite a bit of abundance of rain here lately. The good thing has been slow rain, nothing really fast, but we've seen throughout the country that those fast rains are coming in as well. We see what's going on in California. Have we done a really good job of really cleaning our drainage? That'd be to our city manager, I guess. And the reason why is that I was here during the flooding, the Halloween floods, and it's something that we I think as a city kind of failed. I wasn't on council at the time, but we did have a lot of flooding here, and I got to witness a lot of it because I was out volunteering with some of the cleanup. But a lot of it was just debris, and I'm just wondering if we're doing our due diligence as a city to get that debris up.
Yes, sir, I believe we are. And I know Mr. Wilder can talk about it here in just a moment, but we're certainly trying to keep those drainage channels clean. We do maintenance on those. As the chief mentioned, there are several known problem points around the city. So I think when we have these high intensity rain events, we know we're going to have problems out there because they just don't have the capacity to handle the kinds of waters that are going through those areas. So I think it's doing the proper maintenance and then also bringing you a CIP program that can try to address some of those areas over time. So Harper, did you have anything you wanted to add about the maintenance areas that you wanted to talk about?
Harper Wilder, Public Works Director, Mayor Council. No, you're exactly right. And our drainage utility crews are out working every day, doing the same thing that you're talking about. So we're in a different place than we were in the past prior to having that drainage utility crew. But those guys on a regular basis are doing the same thing.
That's great. Thank you, Harper.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it. The other thing is you talked about, I hear a lot about depending on the county for certain things. Something that I witnessed during a couple of the events that we've gone through in our recent history from 2021 on was, the first thing was the pandemic. We, as a city, rallied because the resources are so spread thin that the county has to address too many areas. So one of the things we noticed as a city that we had to step up and address a lot of those key areas that we needed when it came to providing food, shelter, or anything that we were doing as a community at the time. The other event was the winter storm. Something that I witnessed was the county's overstretched. If we're relying on them, we have no plan. And the reason why is that I got a phone call after being out in the weather all day long distributing water. I got a phone call at 9 or 10 o'clock at night saying we had 20-something displaced residents from Buda, from an assisted living center in the Methodist Church here in Kyle. When I got there, they were all sitting on metal chairs. There was no cots, nowhere for them to lay down, nowhere to shower, nothing. And that was very disturbing for me. And that's one reason I think I was on board for creating emergency management within our city. So what I would encourage us to do as a city is not rely so much on the county, but do our own in-house as well. And some of the things we could do is identify churches that have a better facility. I totally thank the Methodist Church, but they were not prepared to house those people there that night. We had to scramble around. One of the things we found out was the assisted living facilities that were available opened their doors for us. So I would definitely reach out to them and look at what kind of partnerships we can make with them. I know that St. Anthony's is another one that has showers, and maybe as a city we could implement cots or something. I mean, just something to be quick. That night, we were not prepared as a city to house those residents. If those assisted living facilities haven't opened their doors, they would have slept on the floor or on a stage, and that would have been it. So being really weather prepared is something we need to be cognizant about and make sure we're doing our due diligence to for anything that comes into our city, that we're taking care of our residents to their measure. And that's what I'm hoping on.
Yes, sir, will do. And as you mentioned, one of the best steps moving forward was to acquire our own emergency management coordinator, and that's what Mr. Patabas's job is to do, is to try to secure us a better place to serve our citizens using all the resources that we have, make us more independent as possible, and when that's prudent, to put us in a better place for events such as that catastrophic event that you mentioned.
Chief William, thank you, and appreciate y'all, and look forward to working with you on the future.
Yes, sir.
On this.
Chief, if I and Mayor Pro Tem, if I could, I just wanted to also point out that we can certainly look at having some more ownership of the centers and shelters that you talked about and be prepared for those incidents, and I totally understand that point. One of the concerns that we do have is many of the locations in town, I don't think any of those locations have a generator installed, correct? So if you do have a power loss here like we had in 2021, none of those facilities would have any power to them, which is really problematic. So as we look at new facilities, one of the things that we've been thinking about is potentially if we do a rec center, a community center, whatever that might be, is making sure that we have a place that could serve as a shelter and a backup generator at it, at that location, which would give us a lot more capacity to handle something if it were to occur. You know, unfortunately, when you have those events and power goes down, it's one of those cascading events, and it's really difficult to work through. But right now, we don't have any of those capabilities at our facilities.
Correct.
Councilmember Heiser.
Yeah, Chief and Brian, would it be possible to look at how we could integrate the Uber program into our preparedness plan for those who lack the ability to transport themselves and loved ones to any of the shelters, if it were to come to that?
Certainly, yes, sir. We could explore that, absolutely.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
So we can certainly look at that issue. You know, one of the things that will be a concern for us is if there is an ICE event, if there's no drivers out there to actually be on the roads. It's one of those situations where even if you had some kind of subsidy for the Uber, they're really not a way to get people to where they need to go. So I think one of the things we talked about was just transportation of, if we did have folks who needed to get to a shelter or to a warming center or cooling center, whatever it might be, how do we help get them to where they need to be? There's a lot of times where I think it could be helpful, but if it's a true disaster zone or if streets are impassable, it's going to be a difficult thing.
Yes,
But we can look at that a little bit further.
Councilmember Tobias.
Okay, I'll just make mine real quick. I understand about the donation part, because we could try to go out and get contracts for, or have donations given to us, right? But we also have to have a storage facility. And we also have to be able to have an item to where we can have exactly what you're saying, inventory. What if we were to get perishable items, where we store them and so forth? That brings up the question again about the warming centers and so forth. If the electricity is out, we don't have a facility that has the fueled generators like in some of the buildings I see in Austin, where they have constantly maintenance monthly generator tests where you shut the power off, but then you kick on the fuel generators to get the buildings up and running. So I understand we have to look at that. My other thing would be to Rachel. When it comes to the communication itself, I know you do a good job informing us, whether emails of situations that's going on. You're doing your best to try to get us in real time. What would be your challenges that you see that we could be able to help out, or the city could help, or with your improvements that you've seen through these incidents that you have? What challenges have you seen?
I think, honestly, the most important thing during emergency operations is the posting of verified information. Oftentimes during this, everything and anything gets posted on social media. People just want information quick, but quick information isn't always reliable, accurate, or good information. So I would say my number one request would be from council is to use the updates that we send you to notify residents, because I know y'all get calls, y'all get texts, y'all get emails, y'all get all of that from your residents as well. So if you have questions, I'm the liaison between our emergency operations people. So if you have a question about a fire incident, you can relay that to me, and I can relay that to Chief Taylor or whoever the IC is. And then that way we're not impeding our actual first responders that are out there in the field responding to it. And I can do my job to get the information, get it out to whoever is requesting it, as well as to y'all if y'all are having residents ask about certain roadways or certain things like that. That's kind of my job, is to make sure that those questions are getting answered and that they're going to the appropriate departments to get the correct answer,
Exactly.
verified answer.
I think the perfect example on that was the Aztec Village situation.
Yes.
It was a grass fire, but what we're hearing from people in social media was houses were burning down.
Yes.
The whole neighborhood is wiped out, and so that puts a little bit of panic on somebody like us who are elected officials who are getting those calls, and then you don't hear anything. So what is the normal response would be? Is people start showing up on scene, which is still a big no-no.
Which you definitely don't want.
Exactly,
yes.
because you're just putting yourself in a dangerous situation itself. So I think that's where I would then was calling to see where are the shelters in place. That causes library. Then I checked the library, checked the First Baptist Church, and then I finally went to the Public Safety Center where everybody was gathered. So that leads to that kind of procedure is for us. If that was to happen, a critical incident, what would be the procedure that we would have to notify all of us if we need to do a debriefing for council to get all the information up front? To say 1 o'clock, meet at the Public Safety Center, everybody be there, we're going to do a big announcement, and then that's when we can utilize the Public Safety Center briefing room to do a mass briefing to the media, to the news outlets, to the city and so forth, and we're all caught up and we're all have the same accurate information, which also led to Mayor Mitchell's point of like, how much information can we give out that's accurate? Is it something that we have to, protocols we have to follow to prevent
Definitely.
any kind of misconception, miscommunications, and so forth?
During specific emergency events, we often we establish what's called a JIC. Often, it's a Joint Information Center, and that is often separated from the EOC, depending on the emergency event, because we often don't want media at the head of where we're making decisions. All the information is coming in. We want to stage them away from that. Same with residents and things like that. So we often, depending on the event, we would institute a JIC, and that would often get the media away from the actual emergency area itself, or to a safe area where they can film it and get information accurately from the press or the media liaisons, PIOs, whoever's in charge.
Exactly.
I think another important part of the JIC and the Emergency Operations Center in and of itself is City of Kyle staff aren't always necessary the incident commander. Often, if it's a fire, it's going to be Chief Taylor is going to be our incident commander, and we are often taking pointers from him on where resources should go, what information needs to get out, and things of that nature. So every operation is a different thing altogether, but we do try to essentially have only verified information goes out to y'all. We try to send that as soon as we get information verified, we try to send it to council, and then it goes out to the public immediately after that, just so that y'all have information as soon as that information is live to get back out to residents.
So could that be in part of the policy to designate specific, IPOs, PIOs, public information officers, to where that's the liaison that the media needs to go to? That's the person that would be handling those kind of situations. That way, if I'm not calling Amber or I'm trying to reach Jerry like that one day, I know that this is the point of contact and we're all meeting at a specific area and so forth.
Yes, sir. I think we can certainly do that. I think the simplest thing for the council is when you have questions, you call me directly, and I will disseminate that back out to the team and control that information to make sure I'm giving you and all of you the same information, that we're getting the right information to you. I think one of the challenges that I've seen here and a lot of other cities that I've been a part of is there's an issue, an emergency, and everybody is trying to help and do the right thing and get information out, but they're calling multiple different people. Those people then have to pick up the phone and call other people and find out what's going on, and it leads to a lot of confusion. So I think a centralized point, and I think that's some of the stuff we want to do with Will and the chief, is sit down with the council and have some EOC training and talk about this, about how the EOC works, how the chain of command works in the EOC, and it may not be the chief, it may not be me, it may not be Chief Taylor, this incident commander, it may be a different point that's depending on the emergency of how that would work, and then how we handle communication to you as a council, how you handle giving us great information about what you're hearing from the constituents, because that's one of the things that I really value is someone in a neighborhood that has told you about X issue and we may not know about it. It's really important that you get that information to us so then we can get someone to address it. But it's how it's done is really important. Otherwise, it's very difficult for us to manage and prioritize what gets done by whom. So we're going to look at doing some training with you guys to talk about that, go through some actual disaster drills and walk through this so you can see it a little bit more in a live situation. We're hoping to do that. I think it's March or April.
It's April.
I know it's kind of trying to find a time to get that scheduled for you. And you can see how the EOC Operations Center works, how we would use the council space next to us, and then the briefing room that Rachel was mentioning. So there's a lot of pieces to it. Each disaster and each emergency is a little bit different, but unfortunately, we will have one of these that we have to deal with either this year or next year or some year in the future, and we want to make sure we're doing everything to be prepared. But it's great questions, great discussion. Hopefully that's helpful as we kind of think through it. But I think that how we manage communication is really important to make sure we're being responsive.
Yes, thank you. I yield, Mayor.
Some of us have already gone through the training, correct, Chief? So some of us are certified already?
Yes, sir. Some of you have taken the state type training and have good information. What we would like to do when you get this invite that's coming soon, if you haven't already received it, is we want to actually sit down in the EOC and kind of go through some operational examples and show you what's going to happen so you'll know what's going on in the operational room, and then talk to you about the room where you might be to help make some decisions, and we're going to show you how that information flows. So we're going to walk through some examples. We're going to keep it short and to the point and concise, but meaningful. Yes, sir.
Councilmember Zuniga.
Yes, I have a few questions. Hopefully I get them right. So the experienced temperature, 110, I think that might be a little too high. I'd like to see that number lower just because of the higher risk of dehydration or heat strokes. Maybe we could also look at increasing fans and water misters as part of that during those heat droughts that we have. And Chief, could we also maybe consider talking with the hospitals during one of these long heat droughts,
okay.
Just so that there's medics, I guess, in case someone does have a heat stroke,
Sure.
that we have to rush. And then the agreement with the shelters and schools and the churches with the county, would it be possible for us to review what that agreement looks like? Because if there were a tragic event, now we would have to know about the disruption of the education for the kids there. How would that work at what school? How would that affect the school?
I think what that would do is, if it's during school hours, I don't think we're going to be bringing community members and citizens onto an active school campus with students. I think we're going to try to use the facilities or parts of facilities that are not attended by students at the time. We're not going to try to intermingle the two.
Right.
But that would all be done in cooperation with the school based on what school is available, where students are for the day, how long is the emergency, what students can be shifted to other campuses based on the critical need for space. If it's a weather event, it's very likely that school may not be in session anyway, so it may be an empty building. So each situation has its unique elements, and I think that's where the partnership comes in with us, the county, the school district, and we make the best decision of availability at that time based on all the totality of the circumstances.
Okay. And then also kind of would like to second what Councilmember Rizzo said. The Southside Community Center, San Marcos already has a homeless population.
Yes, sir.
So what would concern me would be City of Kyle residents would have to go use the overnight shelter, and then there's overcrowding already in there, and they're trying to transition from a more stable phase to get people back into stability. So now we're kind of creating that cycle. So now I know it's temporary, but there's got to be a better balance. Maybe we can
So are you
find
thinking?
a church, a local church, and have a stronger
So none so
relationship
far have
here.
generators. So generally when you want to look for a shelter, you want it to work in all conditions basically at all times. Our churches, our emergency management coordinator did a quick survey, called the churches, none of them have generators.
All right.
So if there is an associated power outage with that particular emergency, that church is going to be unavailable because it's not going to be able to provide heat or anything that you
Right.
really need.
But if the church has a good facility and that's what they're lacking, that would solve a huge problem.
Absolutely.
For us down the road that
Sure, it
would
absolutely would.
provide a better service for our residents so that they don't have to go to another city.
So is a suggestion perhaps city partnering with them to help fund a generator in terms of use for their facility?
Create a more robust agreement framework that would support that. And then the last thing, I know food's not allowed, but I think snacks should be welcomed at warming centers and cooling centers.
Absolutely. Absolutely, they would be. They're just not part of the requirement, so the city could operate it lawfully within state guidelines. However, would we do that every chance we get? Absolutely. Water, snacks, we may provide things above and beyond the absolute required just for the comfort of our citizens. So we totally agree with you, yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Parsley.
I'm just wondering, what will trigger these events for us to be prepared? And how do we start budgeting for this? Because what I would like to see is numbers. How often have we encountered a situation where we have residents that have been in such distress that we have to activate a shelter? Like Do we have numbers from the police department, from the fire department that says, hey, this is needed for the city? Not that I don't want to be prepared. I just feel like we need to allow every department to do its job, to include the school district. Like, we don't want to be trying to overpower whatever decisions they take if they have issues with weather or if they run out of power. You know, I'm pretty sure they have their own protocols. If we can have any partnership or assistance if they need it, absolutely. But what I would like to see before we start getting into any budgeting situation is how often have we encountered this situation?
Okay.
How many times has the city faced a problem with that we need to activate shelters or activate churches or get into like budget for a generator for a church? And is that what is currently needed? Like, I need to see numbers.
You
in
bet.
order
We can
to
put
do all
together
of this.
several scenarios to give you some examples. We have some numbers that we already know just from kind of doing the work, and our emergency management coordinator put together some really quick numbers. You've asked us to look at several different opportunities that we don't have costs for. A shelter that's already well equipped, so just going in to operate that shelter, you bring your people and the food and the water and whatnot. About $5,000 a day additional cost to the city for a building that's already ready, and they just say come in and set up operations for about 100 people. We did a cost analysis for food and how many staff members does that take to run the shelter, to put them in there, about $5,000 a day. That doesn't take the entire prepping and purchasing of supplies that are in the facility in advance. That's just operating it once you open the doors and it's ready to go. But you gave us several examples you want us to cost out, and we will absolutely do that. I understand what you're asking.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And also keep in mind that the shelters that we opened here, we had volunteers who were trained to do that, so they volunteered their time. When you're looking at numbers, also look at, it's not always about numbers, it's sometimes about, did we have an event here that caused people to be shelterless in extreme weather? That's something we need to look at as well. So making sure, and yes, we did. So we saw it in several fronts here. You never know when it's going to happen, and that's something to keep in mind. We just want to be prepared if it does.
Yeah. One of those opportunities that we'll be sure to cover in some forecasting, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to speak for the city manager, but we had in our notes and in conversations the city's consideration for future facilities. He mentioned it even. If you build a future facility, maybe there's some opportunity to pre-plan and give some forethought to a shelter or center operations and the storage of the equipment, whether it be the cots, maybe the cooling areas, and then also, as Councilmember Tobias mentioned, some refrigerated areas to give some longevity to some of your donated food items or whatnot. Perhaps that could be considered in some of those future facilities as well. But we'll bring you back several options.
I wasn't done. Can I say something else? Sorry. So part of the questions I had were more towards the infrastructure damages that we can sustain when we have weather events, like what happened with the snow apocalypse, and then Plum Creek lost water for a week.
Yes.
Those are things that really worry me, that I feel like we need to have a plan in place. I don't know. I know at some point, I don't know what happened back then. And those are the things that I would like to be prepared, because I mean, 1 week with no water, that was a disaster. And I know Councilmember Rizzo was supplying water to the apartments or the apartments from Plum Creek. That's one of the things that I would like to see in some sort of like folio or manual that we do in case of emergencies. Are we prepared? How is our infrastructure? How are our pipes? Are they going to support any extreme weather? I mean, I feel like we are out of it this year, that we didn't encounter any crazy stuff, but those are things I would like to see.
Yes,
for us
ma'am.
to
I know
have
the
a
city
plan.
manager and staff have already been talking about that, so we'll get all that put together in a report for you to review. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Councilmember Heiser.
Yeah, could we engage the school district to get an understanding of how many kids that, there's something called Hazelwood Families, where I don't know too much about the program, but it's where they receive financial assistance, and I've heard through various conversations that there's some kids in the school district who live with their families in their cars, and just sleep in parking lots in their cars. If there's anything that we can figure out from them to possibly have some of these families identified in advance, so that if we are in a situation we could reach out directly to them to offer assistance.
But is it because of weather events?
I'm not talking just like on a normal Tuesday, like today. I'm talking about if there were to be a weather event, and we have families who are Kyle residents living in their vehicles, whose kids go to our schools. Is there?
Yeah, we'll certainly ask if that list would be available to us. Obviously, that's a constantly evolving list as people grow up and move around, but we would certainly ask, could that list be made available to us in time of an emergency so that we could provide services to those in need? Yes.
Even if we can't get it, if we could give information about what we're doing to
Yes.
them so they could pass it along as
Right.
well?
Yes,
That certainly make sure we have good communication with the school district. Yes, sir.
Absolutely, we can do that.
I think I just want to make sure I get clear direction on the shelter discussion. We can look at, I think for our future facilities, that would be our recommendation, is that we look at certainly having some kind of capacity in a future facility that we build. We don't have that now.
Right.
And then for some of the existing arrangements that we have with either churches or some of the other facilities in town, that we look at trying to see what kind of temporary type generators could be deployed, how we would do that, what's the engineering behind that, those kinds of things. Is that the direction of the council? I think I've heard many things. I just want to make sure I've got the right direction from you.
Yeah, definitely. That's
Okay.
what I
We-
heard.
Sure, we can certainly do that. And hopefully there's some situations with generators that we could do. Generators can get very, very expensive, as you just heard, with the electrical engineering and things that go into it. But maybe there's some temporary things that we could do that are certainly more cost effective.
Yeah, you
So
could probably
we'll
do
come back to you.
a generator on a trailer. We probably have some here that we use, and just have the connect real quick.
How you
that we
connect
could
it,
do
yes,
real
sir.
quick.
We'll look
Yeah.
at that. We'll bring it back to you.
So I was also clear that there was a discussion about the experienced temperatures, maybe consider a lower temperature. And then, Councilmember, you mentioned you would like to see some costing of what that's going to look like based on the number of days that we have that in a year that we typically experience. So we'll try to model that out the best you can, so you can see what temperature you choose, we put in the policy, and what that could look like on forecasting for cost.
And I did want to say on the warming and cooling centers, it's been hot and cold since I've been here. So I had both a summer and winter here. But for the locations that we've identified, the Krug Center and the library, those are our two designated locations that we've indicated for you. But in each of those events, when it's gotten cold and hot, I've gotten requests from the council to do alternate locations. So I want to make sure that if the council is clear on the locations that were designated, that these will be our primary spots. And that would be part of that policy the chief had mentioned, that we'll bring that back to you with some criteria. We can work on what the temperatures are, what council's comfortable with. But I want to make sure the locations are absolutely clear, because the last thing we want to be doing is when we're having one of these moments is have a lack of clarity about where we're supposed to be doing it and for what criteria. So hopefully that's helpful for you.
Trigger depending on the capacity of like if we are gonna start with the library, and then this is gonna be the capacity that the library has, and then have we come close to that capacity, then something, and the second location can be triggered to that.
Yes.
Not just like, hey, let's just open City Hall and let everyone in there, because that's not what goes in.
Certainly, we can
policy.
do that, and I think both the library and the Krug Center have room to kind of accommodate a larger group. They have seating. It's kind of ready for some groups of people to be there. All of our city offices are open, but they're not always equipped for those things, and we want to make sure we have good coordination on the resources we have, the snacks, the drinks, the staff that go to those facilities. We want to make sure we know where to send them, that we coordinate that. Otherwise, it's very difficult to manage. So we just want to make sure we raise that question. I know I've had questions from you, the council, in the past on those, and I want to make sure it's clear what facilities we're using.
Any further discussion? All right, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
All right, next up, agenda item number 11, receive a report, hold discussion, provide staff feedback regarding the City of Kyle's legislative programming, priorities, grant opportunities, and strategic advocacy. Mr. Elizondo, welcome.
Thank you. Jesse Elizondo, Assistant City Manager. I was wondering how long it would take before I was up here giving a presentation. Two meetings. I should have known that it wouldn't take very long. But I'm excited to be here today, this evening, specifically talking about a topic that I think will have an impact on the city, and that is the City of Kyle legislative program. So before we jump into the actual presentation and get discussion and feedback from council on the legislative program and on legislative priorities. I want to talk just a little bit about what we're looking at as a whole at the legislative program, how we're looking at it, why we want to put it in place, and what we're expecting to get from it. So every city has some framework of a legislative program, whether they know they do or not, just by virtue of existing. And every city council and every organization has legislative priorities, whether they explicitly say what they are or they don't. I'm happy to say that the city of Kyle has a very strong framework for a legislative program already, due in large part to city council and the intergovernmental relationships that you all have built over the years, along with, if I can say this, the fact that you guys are interested and very involved in legislation that's going on at all levels of government. On top of that, as a city, we have strategic advocate partners that we have utilized to grow partnerships and to get in the room with certain agencies and administrations, which is very helpful. And then we have in the past been seeking resources and grant opportunities for projects that we have across the city and trying to align those with strategic priorities and legislative priorities that we've had. That is a very good framework for a legislative program. And what we're trying to do with this program is to look at all of that holistically and then bring it all together in a comprehensive document for a multitude of reasons. One is to solidify and target the specific priorities that this council has as a whole, right? As a united voting body. Every council member has priorities that they focus on and that they have, but as a whole, to bring it all together and identify and solidify those priorities. Secondly, to increase the amount of knowledge that we have and that we're getting to council from legislation across all levels of government, and to boil that down to be as concise and clear as possible and get it to council in a routine and regular way, and have it align with the legislative priorities that have been set. And then thirdly, to work very specifically with strategic advocates and work with agencies and administrations at all levels of government so that we really can increase and grow the resources and the partnerships that we have and go after, in a very specific way, those grant opportunities. And when you have all of that stuff working together in tandem and streamlined and have a city council and a staff that's all working on it together, what it does is force multiply the impact that you all will have as an elected body, as an elected unit, and the organization as a whole. And that's really what we're trying to do by bringing all of this together in a comprehensive program, is to make you all a driving, connected force, not only in Hays County, but also in the region, in the state, and federally as well. And I also want to say very quickly that this document that we're talking about putting together is not a document that we will bring back to council and approve and then say this looks really great and stick it on the shelf and let it collect dust. This is, in our mind, this is a living, breathing, dynamic document that we continue to look at. So if we're not communicating the right stuff from this document to council, we come back and we edit this document. Priorities change over time. There might be stuff that we need to add, that we need to take away, that we need to change. We would do that. And then to look at our strategic partners and our strategic advocates and evaluate them on a regular basis and make sure that we have the right partners and that they're doing the most for the city to get what we want to get out of them. That is how we view this document and why it's so important. So let's jump right in and talk a little bit about how we view this document and get into the specifics of what I was just talking about. So the first one is to stay informed. What this program will be is to stay informed of new legislation. So I know all of you know that when Congress is in session, the amount of bills that are being proposed and the amount of bills that are out there is staggering. And I think I looked it up last year. At a federal level, there was more than 15,000 bills proposed, and at a state level, it was like just over 10,000 bills proposed. That's what's being proposed. And then keeping up with that and knowing what's coming and what currently exists can be a huge lift. And so one part of this legislative program is to have staff who works with our partners like National League of Cities and Texas Municipal League and our strategic advocate partners that we partner with to get all of that information that's coming in, to boil it down into a concise and clear way, and then to get it to you all on a regular basis so you know what's happening at a state level and at a federal level, and then can make decisions based on that. And then a second part of this program, which is very important, is for you all to hold influence, and the city as well, to hold influence on policy decisions and to drive support for the local priorities that we've set. And we're looking at this program to do that in a couple ways. One is simply to put those priorities on paper and set them as an organization, right? And why that can be really helpful is from a staff standpoint, when we're going after grants, when we are meeting at conferences, or in some cases speaking to legislation, we know it's very powerful to know as a unit, as a city, what our priorities are, what we're going after, and have them solidified in this ever-changing dynamic plan. From a council standpoint, when we're looking at all that information that's coming in from legislation, you guys have the ability to write resolutions of support or resolutions against to lawmakers as a unit to say this is something that the city of Kyle is interested in, this is something that the city of Kyle definitely does not want. It's a very powerful tool. And then secondly, to use those strategic resources to get in the room, and we'll talk about this in one of the slides, but to be a part of some of these committees and these commissions and boards at the state and national level through our partners, so because as one, it's a great way to network with other elected officials all over the country, but two, a lot of times those groups are very targeted at looking at legislation that's coming through at those different levels, and it can be a real powerful tool to get together with those elected officials, and in many cases legislation will come through those boards and committees when they're looking at trying to get it approved. So I'll talk about that in one of these slides here. And then finally, working very closely with our strategic advocate partners to have the right relationships and partnerships with administrations, with agencies, as we go after the next bullet point, which is to secure funding and resources. Another thing that this legislative program is really aimed at, and this is something that everyone always wants to talk about. It's the big thing of getting partnerships for funding, getting resources, getting grants, for the projects that we're working on. And certainly this program is aimed at doing that. But I did want to stop just for a little bit and talk about grants and grant funding as a whole, and why this program will be so helpful in going after and securing those grants. So everywhere I've been, there's always been a misconception that grants there's just hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars that are out there, and what we need to do is write as many grants as possible and throw them against the wall and try and get as much of that money as we can. If we're not getting grants, we're not writing enough grants. That's always kind of been the misconception, and there is some truth to that. There is a tremendous amount of money in grants through organizations and at every level, the state level, the federal level. But if I can continue the analogy, instead of a shotgun approach to try and get those, the way to really get those grants, because of the way they're written and because of the buckets of money that they're in, is more of a sniper approach. It's more of a targeted approach. And I will tell you that I was looking at the amount of money that came through. I think it was a little over $1 billion for Texas municipalities last year. And the major buckets that those were in were infrastructure, public safety, education, health services, and economic development. Those were the major buckets of money that came to municipalities. And certainly we have a lot of projects that fit those buckets, and we should go after those as well. To a lesser extent, there was money in environmental, in arts and culture, in technology. But what I want to talk about as far as the program is concerned is the way that we have all of the legislation and knowledge coming through, and the way that we have the set priorities allows staff to go after these grants in a very specific and targeted way. A good example of this, luckily, on your consent agenda tonight, are two grants that we're going after right now. It's items 17 and 18. The first is the RAISE grant, which is through the Department of Transportation. It's for $25 million for Kohlers crossing over 35, well, actually under 35. And it includes the Vibe Trail and a whole bunch of different factors into that grant. But to me, that grant is a very broad scope of grant. There's a lot of grants out there that have a very specific scope of what you have to write. But even that one, it's a road that's going across 35. Even that grant, the scope of that grant specifically calls out sustainability, equity, and resilience in growing cities. And certainly, we think that that project fits, right? And $25 million is not a small amount of money. But when we're talking about connecting our east and west side across Kohlers and 35, and the sustainability of how we're going to build that project, and the Vibe Trail being incorporated into it, we feel like we fit that grant proposal really well. On top of that, we have worked to check staff has gathered a whole bunch of information and worked with our grant writer to try and hit a whole bunch of other smaller buckets to say this is other reasons why it's very important that we fit this mold for this grant. And on top of that, we're getting letters of support through our intergovernmental partners. We're working with TxDOT to get support. There's a whole host of things we're doing just for this one grant to target exactly what they're looking for, so we have the best chance to get this grant. The second one is the Creasy grant. It's for the bridge over the railroad right here on Kohlers. And that also, great project, infrastructure project, but it is specifically for traffic congestion and safety specifically over railroads. And so again, we feel like that project would work perfectly for that. That's a $23,700,000 and change grant that would be fantastic. But my point in saying all that is when you look at this legislative program, the way that we're structuring it and the way that we're targeting all these different things with council priorities and with legislation, to use this program to go after these grants in a very specific and targeted way is the way that we will have more success than just general grant writing as a whole, just writing a whole bunch of grants and going after. So it all works together to try and get as much funding and resources as possible and to get us in the room with the right agencies and the right people and the right administration. I feel like I've been talking a very long time. I'm going to go through these very quickly. The next one is obviously informing long-term planning. This program will help not just in the city, but also in the region and in the state with the partners that we're working with. Promote economic development. Obviously, the city of Kyle is growing like crazy. We all know that, and developers are banging down our door to come to build in Kyle. However, there is nothing more. A very attractive thing, maybe not nothing more attractive, but a very attractive thing to developers is a city that has a very strong legislative program, a city that has ties to the legislature, a city that is going out and getting resources and grants and funding and partnerships. So it definitely helps promote economic development. And then, of course, nothing's more transparent than putting all this together in a resolution with the detail of our legislative program. And so it increases our transparency and decision making. So we're going to move on to the actual priorities here, and I will. That was the majority of my speaking. I will go through these quickly, and then we will come back and have discussion and feedback from council. But what we're looking at when we go through these at a federal, a state, and a regional level is for you all to look at these priorities. These priorities that we have down here are what staff has seen. In conversations with council, in viewing the development that's coming here, and viewing the projects that we have. This is what we've put together as priorities from these different levels, but we really want, in this conversation, we really want to hear from you all and see, are these the right priorities that we have on here? Are we missing anything? Does anything need to come off? Does anything need to be put on here? Do we need to raise the priority of any of these? So as I'm going through these, look at them, and then I'll come back to these and we will have a discussion, feedback, back and forth. So from a federal priority standpoint, I think infrastructure and transportation, very important. Each one of them has this, but kind of from a different angle. This is water, wastewater, roadways. Economic development from the standpoint of creating jobs and revitalization of areas. Public safety is always a big one. Law enforcement, but also emergency response, emergency management, which we just had a whole conversation about. And then environmental sustainability, renewable energy, green infrastructure. This specifically checks a lot of boxes when you're going after grant funding at a federal level, is how you're building it, what's your sustainability on it, what's your that type of green infrastructure. And then public health and education, health initiatives, health programs. I know we have a mental health RFP out right now. I know that's something that's important to this council. And then down here as kind of a footnote are some of the agencies that we would want to build strong partnerships with. Of course, National League of Cities, that's something that as a city we can partner with and be a part of, but also Department of Transportation, FEMA, DOJ, EPA. The Department of Energy, I know, has different opportunities that we could go after. From a state standpoint, like I said, we'll come back to these. From a state standpoint, infrastructure and transportation, this more from roads and highways and traffic congestion, water and wastewater. Public safety is always a very high one in the state. Law enforcement, emergency response, economic development, local control. This is one that every time Congress is in session, the state loves to think that they can throw a giant blanket over every single city, and every single city runs exactly the same. Whereas we know that every single city has its own unique challenges and unique opportunities and needs specific things like land use and regulations and local authorities. So that's something that we would put in here as we would have against certain local control that is trying to be put against land use and regulations. Healthcare, I see a cursor moving around. Healthcare services, quality of life, and wellness programs, again, like our mental health RFP. And then Texas Municipal League is definitely someone we would want a partnership with, especially as far as legislation and what's being passed. And some of the committees, the Department of Transportation, we're already building relationships with them, EDC, and in some cases the Historical Commission when you're dealing with historical land use. I'll take a slight break from the priorities here, and I want to talk a little bit about the NLC and the TML. I think this is a tremendous opportunity if council has any interest in getting on these committees or these boards. They are elected officials that, in many cases, there are many seats on these boards because they want as much participation as possible. And depending on what the topic is, you can see there, National League of Cities has community and economic development, finance administration, public safety and crime prevention, infrastructure, transportation. These boards are really a way to increase our influence on legislation, that's especially when Congress is in session, on what's coming through. And like I said, in some cases, when they want recommendations on the legislation, they'll send it through some of these committees because they know it's a bunch of elected officials throughout the nation that are specifically looking at these different things. And from the state level, TML has the Budget and Audit Committee, Executive Committee, Governance Committee. We don't have to talk about this right now, but I just wanted to make sure you all were aware of it, because if you have any interest of getting on these at a state or at a federal level, staff can reach out and we can see what the time frame is for applying and stuff like that. But it can be a very powerful tool. And then regionally, infrastructure and transportation is on every single one, but from a region standpoint, roads, highways, traffic, and water resources, something we talk about a lot. Population growth, specifically here, as fast as we're growing. And then public safety, economic development, housing affordability, stability, community development programs, how we view that and how that builds in our area. And then rural development, as this area explodes, zoning and land use, telecom, broadband, how they branch out and how they're connecting all of these cities. We have wonderful connections right now with regional partners, Campo, CapCog, commissioners. We have Texas State and ACC in our backyard. These are all partnerships that we would want to put in here as part of our legislative program. Okay, last slide. Now I want to go back and have discussion with you all about what you've seen and what you think about these different priorities and the program itself. But really, what our next steps are to take all of this and take your feedback and bring it back in a resolution-based program that has all of these outlined and include the communication, the priorities, the advocacy, the planning, and then eventually we've already begun implementing it. But take that program and start implementing it. And then evaluating whether the priorities need to change or be tweaked, and then ultimately the strategic advocate partners, we want to make sure that they're working for us and building the partnerships that we want them to. So I'm going to stop talking and get my pen out, and we will go back to whatever slide you guys would like to see and start a conversation about anything regarding the program: communication, priorities, advocacy. Yes, Councilmember Parson.
That's like that one right there. I feel like infrastructure and transportation definitely need to be a priority for us.
For sure.
I would go for public safety and environmental sustainability next. But those three are, I feel like economic development, we're definitely on the right track. But infrastructure and transportation should be at least our biggest priority, in my opinion.
Well, Jesse, what I will say is this is pretty new for us to have, not this. Mm-hmm. So yes. to have somebody come up and be able to really lay out a legislative priority and a legislative program, and clearly you've got a lot of competency around this. So it gives me hope that as we're pursuing some of these projects, that we're not doing it, because I think sometimes the electeds, we know what's available, we know there's opportunity, we want to make it happen, but we need a powerful professional on our side helping. And so I think you're very well situated to take us to a whole new level with regards to this legislative program. So thank you for putting it.
It's exciting too. It's fun. It's
so
fun.
even if you're not getting just take my notes feedback from us right now in this moment, we're getting ready to go to DC. I'm sure you've probably booked a ticket.
Definitely a part of it for sure.
As well. So, and we're going to have our visioning workshop here soon. So
also a big part of it.
Just having you there to be able to help guide us through getting clear on some of what we're going after I think it's going to make a huge impact on the city. And so the clock's ticking on big money for us.
And that's true. And thanks for bringing that up. Also, NLC's coming up and the visioning workshop, which can all play into this. This doesn't have to all happen tonight, and we have the exact thing laid out.
Okay. Additional comments, Councilmember Zuniga?
Yeah, I mean, no real specific order, but environment, public health, and our economic, and our infrastructure, would be kind of the keys. I think we do a very great job with our public safety, and we're doing very good with economic development. So residents keep, you know, they want the green spaces, and they want the parks, and they want the trees kept and clean water. So it's the environment. The environment is what I keep hearing a lot of.
I'll also say that when it
with
comes
this rapid growth, right?
Yeah,
we've got to be balancing that out.
Along those lines, I'll say when it comes to grant funding, those buckets that I talked about, with the larger the bucket and the more broad the bucket, the more competition there is for those. And certainly, we're not afraid of competition. We'll go after them and we'll target them. But there is a lot of money out there in these broader, these not broader, but these other buckets that a lot of people don't know about, but have projects for. And so things like arts and culture, things like there was one I was looking at with the EPA. There's money out there to be had, and all we need to do is work through these partnerships to identify projects of ours that fit that scope. And in many cases, the competition for them, don't tell anyone, hopefully no one's watching, the competition for them is not as fierce, and so it would be easier to go after and get those. But certainly, we will still go after the infrastructure projects and stuff like that.
Could you get us a copy of one of the grants submitted?
Sure.
Just so we can judge the quality of it?
For sure.
Councilmember Heiser.
Jesse, do you mind looking into the community mental health grant to see what's available?
Absolutely.
All right, it's a state grant also.
All right, any additional feedback? Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, infrastructure is definitely the top one. Environmental is going to be my second. The reason why I'm looking at green spaces for mental health as well. So that's something that I'd like to make a priority, looking for dollars for infrastructure for green spaces, parks, trails, public land. I mean, just anything we do. During the pandemic, we saw how important those were for mental health, so definitely put an emphasis on that. Public safety is my third. Economic development ramps up there as well, and public health as well. So, but infrastructure is the top priority for me.
Councilmember Tobias.
Obviously, infrastructure, that's a no-brainer. But public safety, obviously, is going to be one. Again, the safer the city, the better the economics. The safer the city, the better your infrastructure is going to be. The safer your city, the more you're going to have the public health and education. And also, the more safer your city, the quality of life, which is your environmental sustainability, which your EPA can tie into your infrastructure.
I completely agree. A very smart man once told me that if you could have the most beautiful city in the world, but if your citizens don't feel safe,
exactly,
everything else falls apart.
That's top priority.
Jesse, I would say yes to all of these. I think one of the things that we're not seeing on the list, especially on federal, on either one, federal or state, is what was just said about the mental health programming. I think that there are funds available that will help us with that. The addiction services, especially with the problems we have with that in our community.
Good point.
And then public safety, as we grow, we're needing more fire stations. We're getting taller buildings. I don't think that the fire department has the capacity to have a tall ladder truck. So we could work with them perhaps. I don't know that they have the capacity to handle this kind of large fundraising. I think our ladder truck's three stories. And we're talking about some buildings now with like new St. David's that are much, much taller than that, 14.
That's a great point. The fire department should definitely be a partner that we are talking to regularly and working with.
And then Texas Parks and Wildlife for our park stuff. They've got some very nice grants. They're not huge grants, but they're nice, and they're not too hard to get. And in the feds, Health and Human Services, I didn't see on the list.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. I think that's it, Jesse.
All right, thank you all very much.
Thank you. All right, moving on.
Actually, Jesse, I have one more.
Oh,
I'm so sorry.
hold on. Yes, sir.
I
Go
just
ahead.
thought about it.
No, go ahead.
Can we look into, because I know the state just, I think there was a, what are they called? There was 10 of them on the ballot in November 2022. Yeah, a proposition for state grants for public parks. And given that we've talked a lot about expanding our public parks here, see if there's anything we can qualify for there.
I want to second that one.
And forest preserves, like I think there's, I know we don't have a lot of forest land here, but there's some opportunity, there's some areas of the city that might be able to, that actually flow really well with the Vibe Trail and where it's proposed to be built, where it could kind of funnel right into, like a very nature-filled area. Thank you.
No, this is great feedback. Thank you all.
All right, any further discussion? All right. Next presentation, not a small one. Receive a report, hold a discussion, and provide staff feedback regarding the strategic planning efforts for the city's water management system and supply. Ms. Schmeitz.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Amber Schmeitz, Assistant City Manager for the record. So staff came to you all last August, and we presented a report about where we were in August in the middle of the hottest summer on record and scary position with regard to our water supply. But we had a plan. And so we implemented that plan. I'm here to tell you about the results of that plan, but also to talk about what we've done since then to plan for immediate term needs, short-term needs, and long-term needs in terms of our water supply. So the topics we're going to cover tonight is the 2023 water year in review, our water demand projections that we've come up with, our current supply, where does it come from, and how much do we have, long-term supply opportunities. We want to become water secure. What does that look like for the city of Kyle moving forward, and then future council actions. So in 2023, the water environment, we were under a historic drought. We had permit restrictions increased and available supply significantly decreased. Water consumption was monitored daily, and we were having historic consumption. Lacked awareness of projected demand on available water supply. So we quickly got together. We called it the Manhattan Project, affectionately, but we put together a good plan, and thanks to the support of council, we were able to implement that plan successfully. So in August 29th, we presented to you where we were at with the drought, our water availability, area-wide drought conditions, and then water conservation measures. And so we implemented a multifaceted approach to addressing the supply and demand needs. First, we designed and implemented and amended Stage 3 restrictions, and we had a goal of a 30% reduction in consumption. And then we rolled out an aggressive community education plan. We closely monitored and reported our water demand. We communicated progress and compliance weekly with the community. We put out signage on key locations throughout the community and press coverage. We didn't turn down one single interview to talk about what we were doing in Kyle with regard to our supply. Thanks to the support of council, we went out and actually enforced our restrictions, and we put in 2,500 hours of water patrol. And then we also acquired additional water supply, and we entered into a water sharing agreement with the city of San Marcos for additional EAA water supply, which was critical for us. We also reorganized within the city to create a standalone water utilities department to ensure the focus was there on our water utilities. We initiated a cost of service study. It will have a component of being conservation focused. Landscaping code amendment was brought before y'all, and it focused on commercial properties. I believe we will be bringing back another code amendment to discuss the residential properties as well. The building department implemented a new method to test the plumbing fixtures in new builds that reduced water consumption significantly in our new builds. And so between this multifaceted approach, our water conservation efforts were successful. We experienced a 42% average decrease daily in water production demand, so we met and exceeded our 30% reduction goal, and then we complied with contractual commitments that we made with the city of San Marcos. As a condition of them sharing their EAA water with us, we promised that we would meet or exceed their restrictions, and we did that. So planning for the next steps, we want to continue to refine our water model and finalization. We want to make sure we have a good handle on the projection of our future demand based on development patterns. So we want to continuously look at that, make sure it's up to date, make sure it's accurate, what's actually happening in the field. We need to address some of the short-term water supply issues. We will be bringing forward projects to do infrastructure upgrades and things of that nature. We also need a comprehensive water plan. We don't have one of those, and we need one to look at the next 50 years. Right now, we also need a short-term water plan through 2028. I'll be talking to you a little bit about that, but we really need to look 50 years into the future. And then also infrastructure improvements, short-term improvements and long-term improvements, what did those look like? And then finally, a water system capital program development. We currently do not have that. So we will be developing that capital program from the master water plan. This is our current water supply. In case y'all don't remember, we get our water from the Barton Springs Edwards Aquifer Conservation District. That's our well 4, that's on the west side. Edwards Aquifer Authority, or EAA, that's wells 1, 2, 3, and 5. They are also on the west side. And then our biggest water supply is the Guadalupe Blanco River Authority, and it's surface water that we get at 2 take points at Lehman and Yarrington. Most important numbers on this page is the last column, and it shows how many million gallons per day we have under different conservation measures. And we asked our consultants, what would it look like if we were under no drought conditions? What would it look like if we were under 100% reduction in our water supply? What would it look like? What would our demand look like if average? You know, we always, seems like we're always under some sort of conservation restriction. And so 5.4 is the number there, and we would have access to about 1.9 million gallons for the year. So if you remember, the slide prior showed that we had about 5.4 million gallons per day access to. This is our projected water demand. And so currently we have a demand projection of 5.18 million gallons per day, which is a little less than our 5.4 available to us. And this continues to rise as we continue to develop and bring new citizens to our city. And how did we come up with that? We used historical population data. I have a little chart on there for you, but we also looked at how have we actually grown, and we decided to use a 10% annual growth. We felt this was conservative. We used 9% in our annual growth assumption for our wastewater treatment plants, and so that's what we ended up settling on in the model. Our planned short-term supply, so existing, we have 5.4 million gallons per day. We do have an emergency interconnect with the city of San Marcos. That is in place. We can access up to 500,000 gallons per day with the city of San Marcos. So that gives us additional supply. The ARWA Phase 1B supply, it will be delivered to San Marcos, and we could possibly access that water as soon as it gets to San Marcos, through San Marcos wheeling us that water. And there we're looking about 500,000 to 1 million gallons per day. Then we have the ARWA Phase 1B supply coming on in December 2025. That's 1.73 million gallons per day. Additional supply coordination with San Marcos and ARWA is 1 million gallons per day. And then finally, the ARWA Phase 1C, 1D supply is 2 million gallons per day delivered in mid-2027. And this chart shows you what our planned supply and demand looks like. And so you can see in 2023, our demand is 5.18 million gallons per day. The dark gray shows you the existing supply and how that measures up against the demand. The light gray is existing San Marcos interconnect. The dark blue is ARWA Phase 1B. Light blue is ARWA Phase 1C and D. And then the brighter blue is additional ARWA San Marcos water opportunities. And below is a table that shows you the delta of basically what our supply is over our demand. This is a summary of the ARWA water and when we're expected to get it. I know that at one point we thought that ARWA was going to be the answer to all of our water needs forever and ever, and that's not the case. But we do have, they are a solution. They are an answer to our long-term water supply. So we will be getting 1.73 million gallons per day in Phase 1B, 3.77 in Phase 1C and 1D. In Phase 2, it would be 8.3 million gallons per day. And there are opportunities to renegotiate our slice of the pie in that. Kyle has different needs than Buda and San Marcos, and so we're willing to, they're willing to also talk with us about what that looks like. So long-term supply opportunities for us, again, I just mentioned that we could talk about the percentage allocation for discussion. Additional GBRA supply, they have some plans for water supply and aquifer storage reuse. We talked to them the other day, and they're speaking to about 20 different entities to talk about this regional solution they would bring to us. Indirect and direct potable reuse. This is a possibility to nearly double our current water supply. We have to make sure we made sure our wastewater was treated to an excellent standard if we were going that way. Expanded reclaimed water system. We want to identify locations that would make the most impact when we use this. Specifically, we're looking at construction water, fields, parks, school fields, things of that nature. And then just continuing to coordinate with our area partners. Moving forward, we're going to continue to monitor and adjust our water restrictions through 2025 based on demand, our agreements, and our water suppliers' conservation. Again, you'll remember that our demand is only slightly below our supply for 24 and 25. Barton Springs entered stage 4 January 1, so it was a 100% reduction on our conditional permit, and it was the first time they had ever done that. EAA stage 3, 35% reduction. GBRA is in stage 2, and that's a 10% voluntary reduction. And at the time this slide was drafted, they were expected to go into further reductions, but we've gotten a lot of rain. And so we might see some of these restrictions lift in the next month or two. We also need to identify and implement short-term system improvement solutions that help us move water from the east side to the west side. We need to continue to discuss with the City of San Marcos regarding supply and continue to participate in ARWA and take leadership in future projects. So coming before you, you can expect that we will ask for several engineering items related to the water system. One would be the water master plan. It will develop demand projections through the build out of the city, develop future water supply needs for the purpose of water supply acquisition and planning for the next 50 years, identify water system improvement needs, which will also be subsequently brought to you for funding and approval. We need to update our drought contingency plan. As you know, it's not very clear on when we trigger some of our conservation methods. And so we want to get clarity around that. We want to know exactly when those triggers are. I think we've done a great job in responding to that and being successful in that, but we also need to base that on data. Short-term water system improvements, we want to look at a third take point for ARWA on the west side to help make sure we have adequate supply on the west side. Capital program projects, we're estimating about $100 million to $200 million in improvements. This could include water treatment, additional infrastructure upgrades, and then additional upgrades in our wastewater treatment. Landscaping code amendments, we want to look at required versus voluntary and then have a focus on the residential. The cost of service study, which looks at our water and wastewater rates. A conservation-based rate schedule will be analyzed and proposed. And then building standards, requiring those that are conservation-focused in our economic development projects or opportunities. And with that, I'm here to take any questions y'all might have.
Councilmember Harris.
I have some concerns about the ARWA water. One of the concerns I have is that it recharges very slowly in that aquifer. So it will recharge at a rate much slower than what we draw. The other is that it is a salt aquifer. Most of our aquifers are, but it has more salt than, for instance, the Edwards at the bottom. So as we draw water, we get more salt. San Antonio already has a desalinization facility online or coming online for their Carrizo water. And I'm wondering if ARWA is looking at a desalinization facility.
I don't believe that's in the works. I don't recall any conversations about being concerned that the water is too salty and we won't be able to treat it with what we have planned for our water treatment plants. So
San Antonio's concerned enough to have a desalinization facility.
Yes, ma'am.
And it is a very salty aquifer, and it will get more so as we start drawing it down.
Yes, ma'am. I mean, I'm happy to discuss that with Graham Moore. He's the executive director of ARWA, and see what his thoughts are. And maybe we're not taking enough. I don't know. I don't know what that is, but definitely we'll explore that.
Thanks.
Additional comments? Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I've got a really big concern here when I'm looking at the draft here at the planned short-term supply. When I'm looking at our demand and looking where we are, what we have and what we're relying on from San Marcos, man, we've got no water.
We have enough.
No, we've got no water. I'm looking at it right now. We're right at the line. If San Marcos decides or they enter a crisis, then we're losing that, what we're getting from them.
Sure. The good thing about San Marcos is they did great planning about 20 years ago. And they have all sorts of different water supplies and sources that they can allocate. They are looking at updating their drought contingency plan to be not so much focused on conservation around like their Barton Springs or EAA water, because they have so much supply that is completely reliable. So there is additional opportunity with the city of San Marcos beyond this 500,000 gallon a day interconnect that we're continuing to talk to them about. We believe that we have enough water. It is very tight. We need to continue to conserve. We need to just continue to monitor that and make sure that we are definitely not consuming more than what we have.
Yeah, it's really alarming to me to see it that close. The other thing is, when we're looking at when we're tying on to the Carrizo Springs Aquifer, I mean, we're tying in the first pipe in 2015, and where the demand is, we're real close. How soon can we get the other two, the B and C, tied in, and can we do those simultaneously? That's something that would probably help out on something like this, but, I mean, this is really tight.
It is, and, I think we work very hard. It's somewhat anticlimactic here of, the last 3 or 4 months with our water team. Michael and Tim and Amber and I meet every week to talk about water. And we've worked very closely with our partners to come up with a plan that meets the projected demand over the next couple of years. But that's why we're here. We wanted to let you know about all the things that we've been doing and the actions that we're going to be asking you to take as a council to make sure we have the next couple of years planned, but more importantly, the long term, that we don't get back in this situation again, that we have water supplies take years to develop. As we know, we've been working on ARWA for many years, and we want to make sure that we're looking at multiple different strategies to meet that projected demand going forward, so that we have a solution in place for you. But all of these supplies are complex. They take a lot of money, time. There's pros and cons of every source. And that's why we're going to engage some professionals to help us on that water supply plan, so that we've got a good grasp of all the different things that are out there. And we don't just put it on the shelf. Every year we come back and update it, that we're constantly evolving with what our demand is and what the supplies are, so we have that plan. But Councilmember or Mayor Pro Tem Brazeau, I do agree. I know it's very tight, but San Marcos has given us every indication that they have the water that's available for us. They do not need it to meet their demands. It's a short-term issue for us until some other supplies come online, and then we can make that work. Both Amber and I and Tim are on the board for ARWA, and we've been working to see what kinds of options do we have to accelerate some of these other phases to come forward. We're in those early conversations about what that looks like, how much water it could be, and how expensive it's going to be. But we'll be bringing all that back to you guys so we can talk to you about the options that we have to meet that projected demand. We know that demand's going up, and we want to make sure we have a good series of options to consider going forward.
Yeah, I definitely want to make sure that we're talking to ARWA, but definitely looking at that 2015. I mean, this line should have been in 2014, and I know COVID, everything else hit, but I mean, we need to get that line on board really quick from when I'm looking at the numbers here. The other thing is doing B and C simultaneously, really pushing for them to do those together. Because if we're waiting on B and then going to C, we're not going to have water. We need to get those in right away and then start looking at I think there's a fourth line that possible, maybe even looking at that option as well now.
Well, yes,
I mean,
yes, sir. We do have, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine.
So we do have, we're looking at that with ARWA board. We do have some opportunities to do that there. GBRA has approached us about another additional line that's possible. We have potential opportunities with other suppliers in the region that have been looking at, frankly, a lot of these supplies, as we've looked at this issue, there's lots of opportunities. Which is the right one for us and which are the right series of ones? That's the question. But I believe we have ample supplies that can be brought on to meet the demand in the next few years, but we need to start now. That path starts right now.
Just real quick, I just want to say that, to your point, Mayor Pro Tem, this is the first time in 7.5 years that I've seen actual data like this presented to us, so that we can have a better understanding of where our water is coming from and what the future projections are. I'd be interested to know what this would have looked like a few years ago, but it's just taken some time. And I think the water model proposal, not realizing that we didn't even have anything like that, is indicative, of the situation we're facing now. But I have a lot of confidence that this is being brought forward to us, and it's difficult to take as we start to get more lasered in on what our water supply is. But I'd rather know the data, know the situation, understand the shortfalls and what we need to do in order to meet it. Because once we get to that point where we really have that firm grasp on our water situation, that's when water no longer becomes so scary, because we understand what the situation is. And so, we just haven't had that, really very much. And then the other thing, to your point, is ARWA was supposed that those blue lines, all of it should be shifted back about 4 years, but we have not been able to get that water turned on, which is why each time that Graham comes to us, we're a little less and less nice about it. We're a little more, we're spending more money, but we still don't have the supply. And obviously this year and then last year, the last 12, 18 months, last 2 summers in a row, it has become a point of concern, to the point of having to put in restrictions on residential irrigation. I'm just really glad that we're in a position right now where we are getting a handle on this. And then it seems to me that, as is the case with a lot of what we're doing, we're about to roll out some really comprehensive planning and then execute on that. So our expectation is that as you're laying this out, that you are going to bring those things forward, and I believe that you are. So I'm excited about that component of it. I was led to believe for many, many years that the amount of water coming to us immediately when our well was finally turned on was substantially more than what is being shown in this projection. I have said it publicly. I've talked to folks about it privately. I've talked to professionals about the water supply. I've talked to Graham about the water supply. I've done the numbers right in front of him and asked him to confirm them with people present. And lo and behold, it's not what it really was being shown to be. So I have concerns too. I think your reaction is appropriate. But it just means that we need to take a comprehensive approach and then go into what Councilmember Parsley has been pursuing as well. I think we need to take a look at how we entitle our lots and our irrigation, because I saw a slide that Georgetown did that we weren't able to mimic because we didn't have the data, but they were able to calculate the exact amount of their water supply that was being drained down by residential irrigation. It was 95% of their overall water supply was going to large lot, single-family residential subdivisions, taking that potable water and dumping it on their grass so the grass would be green. And I understand, I have irrigation in my house. I want to see my yard be green. I want to take care of it. Anyway, we got to get a comprehensive approach, and then I have confidence that we're going to be able to make these numbers work out. But we have to be proactive, and there's no time for us to delay. It's just my thoughts. Councilor Hauser.
I wasn't done.
Oh.
When you cut me off. First of all, I just want to say, definitely the data is well appreciated. I really appreciate the data. It really is eye-opening. So thank you, Brian, for working on this, something we didn't have in the past. Talks to your leadership, but definitely want to keep an eye on this and pray for rain, people. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Pray for a lot of rain, and hopefully we can keep conserving water, so hopefully people don't look at the rainfall that we've gotten. Even though it's been an abundance of rain, it's still not going to make up for the last 10-year drought that we were in. It's been a 10-year drought if people really go back and research it. So these last 2 months of rainfall are not going to combat that, so please continue to conserve, and we'll do what we can as a city part. So thank you, Brian, for these numbers.
Thank you.
Yeah, just one quick
Hang
thing.
on. Are you okay? All right, Councilor Hauser.
Yeah, are you done?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Good?
Thank you.
Okay. You stepped on it a little bit, but just conservation. I mean, there's areas in the country who are affected by droughts where water conservation isn't a government program, it's a way of life. And I think that's where we need to start looking at how to start to recondition behavior so that we are constantly practicing water conservation. And I know some of the programs that we've put together in the past, I'd say calendar year, I'd be interested to see how, or to get an update at some point in time, on how we're executing that program, how we're messaging it to the public. And, I'd even be interested in having discussions on putting some time and energy behind social media campaigns on water conservation. So not only are we looking at trying to speak directly to adults, but also teach kids the importance of water conservation.
Councilor Zuniga.
Hi, Amber. Yeah, so I got a few questions too. I'm a little bit confused on the numbers. So with no drought conditions, our rate is 5.79 million gallons per day, so we use more with no drought?
No, yes, just because we have more water available to us.
Okay, so the numbers are based off of well 4 only being in a drought status with 100% reduction? Is that the only one computed?
Well, it's difficult to show on this chart because Barton Springs is month to month on restrictions, and we have two permits. We have a conditional permit and a regular permit. So we did our best to average that out for the year. If Barton Springs is under no drought conditions, then we have access to 350 million gallons for the year.
But our numbers are based off of expecting a drought, right?
Right. I want to draw your attention to the middle number is that we're
Right.
always under some sort of conservation. Yes.
I see the 1 billion gallons per year. So I'm just trying to figure out, is that summed by the 1.6 billion from GBRA, the 78 wells, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then are we picking the middle one of the well 4, the 205?
So the GBRA is firm capacity, and that's the capacity we know is available to us. And Ryan Owens here, if he can help me with a little bit of the technical assumptions of this. But the firm capacity is what would be available to us no matter what the conditions are. And so we reflect that for GBRA and EAA. And then for the Barton Springs and the total gallons per year, Ryan, what assumption, or maybe Tim knows?
So you're saying that these could not be reduced further, because when we're in a drought, every city is in a drought, right?
Right.
So everyone's going to have a reduction.
Right. So exactly, firm capacity means what we can rely on all the time. This is the water that we will always have available to us under these two permits.
So
Correct.
the way that we, if I could just interject, the way that we tried to look at firm capacity is even with all of the restrictions, the most restrictive conditions in place, we will have access to those number of gallons. And then you have a series of other conditions, of normal conditions or lesser restrictions of what that supply could be. So firm capacity is theoretically the most conservative approach of water that you can have. What we want to do is ultimately build our projected demand based on firm capacity plus some factor above that. So you always have some safety factor above it, whether it's 10, 20, 30%, whatever that needs to be. That's the idea behind the chart, is to try to calculate what that firm capacity could be so that we know even if they went to stage 3 or 4 restrictions, do you have enough water to meet your demand or not? And I know Tim can probably talk about perhaps the calculations on this slide. It is confusing.
Well,
Councilmember Zuniga, I understand the
you get the
question,
1 billion,
but we can walk you through that
right.
math.
So you got the 1.9 billion, you divided it by 365 days, right? So you got the 5.40 sort
Right.
of million gallons per day.
Correct.
Okay. But
Yes,
that
sir.
5.40 is what we need moving forward. And then Brian, your model is only taking into consideration the population of residents in our city? Does that include like a subtraction of development as well?
No, so the 5.4 is not what demand is, that's the supply, how much we project the supply would be in this particular scenario. And
Right.
the demand projections of how much we're going to use, that's the other chart. And we looked at historical use, and I believe added a 10% factor, which has been consistent over the last few years. We believe that's conservative based on what we've seen it grow each year, inclusive of all new development and existing customers as well.
Okay. I mean, I second what everybody says. I think our deltas are very tight. But this could all change if we're not in a drought.
Right.
Then we've got a lot more to use.
Yes, sir. That's the point. And it's also the timing of rainfall. If you have a good rain in July or August, that's a lot more impactful than having a good rain in March, because that's the hottest temperatures. You do see there's direct impacts with rainfall in those time periods of what people use for irrigation, which irrigation bumps up our usage 60%.
Yes, sir.
In the peak summer. So it's the June, late June, July, August, those peak summer months, those are our peak days that we have. If you have just some good rainfall in some of those time periods, it can dramatically affect the numbers of what the usage is. So it's an interesting series of things. We're showing you averages across the whole year, but the reality is there's peaks and valleys in the usage.
Any reason why you didn't go further out, I guess?
Past 2028?
Yeah, to see more data points?
Well, that's one of the things that we'll be looking at in the master water plan. We could run some numbers. At that point, we don't believe we have good, strong projections on some of the long-term supplies because there's so many different supply factors. That's what we need to come up with is what are the supplies that we want to use? And then look at all of the LUEs and developments that we have coming into the city and make good, accurate predictions of what those demands will be going forward. And some land use assumptions based on the comp plan. It gets a little bit fuzzier as the longer you go out, harder to predict, but that's what that water master plan will do.
And if we run into trouble, I guess, how will we see it? Since if we're going beyond the 5.4.
Again, that's the supply. So if we have less supply than that is the question?
Yeah, so we have a difference of like 0.72, 0.7 million gallons a day. But, I mean, you could easily burn through that. That's just 1 million gallons a day.
So we look at water usage and supplies every single week, as I mentioned, as an internal team, and we monitor that very closely. And we'll be looking at our permit levels every single week and month, and we'll be coming back and monitoring that and giving you updates as we see it. Similar to what we did this past year.
Exactly, council member. Here's the list that we're gonna continue to look at those. We're going to adjust our water restrictions accordingly. So right now we're on an every other week watering schedule, and that was based on last year's demand and supply. So we'll continue to adjust to that. We're going to look at short-term infrastructure improvement solutions, and then continue our discussions with the city of San Marcos for additional water supply.
Councilor Harris.
GBRA says surface water. Is that Canyon Lake? Or do they have other surface water sources?
It's Canyon Lake.
Canyon
Yes, ma'am.
Lake, which the boat ramps are closed at Canyon Lake right now. It's very, very, very low. Are they anticipating any other sources available to us other than just Canyon Lake?
They did speak to us. They have water. Tim can probably talk about the technical issues better than I can, but they have plans for an aquifer storage reuse.
Yeah.
And you want to talk about the supplies?
Sure. So Tim Sanford, Assistant Director for our Water Utilities. Good evening. GBRA did announce to us they have plans regionally. Amber mentioned earlier there's 20 or so stakeholders, which are made up of mostly public entities. They're looking at using the drainage basin for the Blanco River and Guadalupe River, pulling that water from the coast, bringing it back up here closer to Central Texas, and then securing that water along with some ASR projects when there is flow on the river, sending that downhole, bringing that back up through pumps and things, and then delivering that to those that are interested in either a raw or a treated form. We're still in those conversations to see what capacities we would prefer to have as each city is spoken to, but there's just kind of detailed information that's not been ironed out just yet.
Okay, thank you. And then another question. Now I think this one can wait. Never mind.
What's where are we at in the water model timeline in terms of RFP, contract? How long is it going to be out, and when are they going to expect? We've done master plans in the past, and I think this may be the most important one we've ever done, possibly. But where they get done quick, and we've done master plans that never got done, where we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and we never adopted them.
That will not happen here.
I don't think it will, but what's your expectation for when we can start to see?
My expectation is in 2 weeks we'll have this master plan on your agenda for approval. I've already gotten a proposal from the firm of STV. That's a engineering firm, has a lot of expertise in this area. We feel very comfortable with them. We have not done an RFP, to be clear with the council, but we believe they're a very qualified firm. We've been working with them very closely on the water model, and we're recommending them to you as a professional service. That's allowed by statute, that you can make an award to a firm like that without an RFQ or RFP process, but we believe it's critical to move forward and to move forward quickly. The
Have
goal
they
would
set
then to be-
expectations with you about time frame for?
Yes, sir. So fall, we would hope to have the final plan presented to us, that we would come back to council. But even before the final plan is presented, as we see items that we need to move on, we'll move on them right away, come back to you and let you know. But we understand the urgency behind this, and quite frankly, we believe that the city's a little behind in these areas, and we want to move quickly to get this moving. So we're all over it, and we're going to bring it back to you very quickly and get started right away. And that's the reason for the presentation tonight, quite frankly, is to make sure that the council is aware of the work we've been doing and the series of items that you're about to start seeing, all related to addressing the water issue. We've talked about supplies, we've talked about the master plan. There's going to be a series of capital projects that are also going to be recommended to you. So it's not only just the supply, it's where the supply comes into the city and how you get it to the appropriate parts of the city that's using the water, that internal distribution network that we have. That needs work, and we need to make sure we have a good plan of how that's going to transfer water around in the city. So you'll have that coming to you as part of the budget process with those. And then we're also going to look at the staffing that we have, the contractors that we have, the consultants that we have, to make sure we have a team that can execute that plan and get those projects underway and get them done to meet the demands. So it's all those things together. It's a lot of pieces. We've reorganized with a water utilities director focused on nothing but that area. Amber's portfolio has been very restricted to focus just on the infrastructure projects, because I think we need that here, and it's a focus that's going to take a sustained effort over some time to get us where we need to be. But it's all those things combined that's the reason we're here, is to let you know you're going to start to see a series of those things, and they will be expensive. I want to make sure everybody knows 100 to 200 million is an estimate. It's a wide range, because it's an estimate, because the honest answer is we don't know exactly how much it's going to cost. But I want to make sure the council and the community knows it will be very expensive to get ahead of the curve on these. But we're committed to make that happen. So, Mayor, hopefully that answers your question, sir. I just want to make sure we got that in front of you.
Councilmember Harris.
One of the things that we will be looking at is revising our ordinances related to water use for businesses and residences as we look at ordinances. And there are a number of things that the council can do to help control that. We can look at requiring LEED certification if we want to provide incentives. We can look at one water buildings that dramatically decrease the use, and we need to, I think we seriously need to take a look at new industry coming in, the amount of water they're using and how they're going to be using or recycling that. So we have a responsibility on that too.
Councilmember Parsley.
Thank you. Hey, Brian, quick question. I know at some point we discussed maybe the city taking a look into what are the legalities of us requesting or requiring from new builders to have a percentage of water friendly conservation landscaping, like something that we can actually require, not that we suggest you do this, that we require you to do this.
We've been working with the planning group, and we'll have some ideas coming forward of some options about how we can change the development code and give them more flexibility or requirements of what they have to use for that. The one water approach that Councilmember Harris mentioned, it's a way for some large facilities that you can manage that. I think it's all of these things and then others that are going to help us kind of get to where we want to be. So we really want to look at it comprehensively and try to give you all of those tools to be successful. But we do want to bring that back to you as well. I think those are good ideas. As something as the region changes, I know that we talked about with usage, we need to adapt to that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I might say, we have you're anticipating 10% demand growth, and while new folks are coming, folks are developing, the city is growing, really, how difficult would it be for us to set as a goal a certain percentage of demand reduction through programs like, landscaping? I do believe that based on what Georgetown produced, And anecdotally, what Kyle has said is that the lion's share of the demand is still residential irrigation. And so it's like, what kind of proactive approach could we take to achieve a 10 or maybe even a 20% reduction in demand from our existing, so that we can reset? Because right now, the way it works is if there are no water restrictions, people just dump water out. We had a month where, I mean, the amount of water, and it was hot and it hadn't rained in forever, but the supply was still enough that we hadn't gone into those lower tiers. I mean, it's like people were just hoarding water. I mean, it was so much water. It was in August when that was, and it was like we just blew through everything. Just like seems like everyone just put a hose out on the ground and just let it go. So what can we do, just to piggyback on what Councilmember Harris and Councilmember Parsley are saying, like, not just in terms of cultivating these supplies, but setting targeted goals for reducing demand regardless of whether or not a drought is coming, because certainly it is. I saw something I've never seen in my life. I've driven, I'm from Gatesville in Coryell County, which is go up to Waco and turn a left, and you have to go over Lake Belton, which is a big, huge lake that a lot of those neighboring areas draw water from. Green field over the bridge. I've never seen it in my life. You could not see water. If you've ever driven over Lake Belton, it's a massive lake. There's no water. It had turned into grass. So first time in Lake Belton history that happened. And that's not even the Austin region. You know, that's the Waco region that was experiencing. So we did just experience an historic drought. But given what we're seeing in the news about the changing climate as well as a growing region, you know, we need to not just cultivate supplies, but also consider demand, in particular residential irrigation, because that's where the water's going onto lawns.
It's a fantastic idea and goal for the council, and I think we could include that in our water master plan and even just some of the short-term work that we're doing with our consultants.
All right. 3 big presentations. Anybody want to add anything else? All right. They were all important, though. Thank you, all 3, very much for walking through that. All right. We'll see how this goes. Next up is consent agenda. It's very large. We've discussed some of these items. Does anybody have any particular items that they want to pull and discuss?
Can I have 22 and 23, please?
Can I have 14?
It's 14, 22, and 24.
Mayor, just real quickly, I'll just
23.
13 and 18.
All right.
Those will be quick.
All right. Anyone else? All right. I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda items 15, 16, 17, 19, 20, 21, 24, 25, and 26. Second. All right. Motion by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Heiser, that we approve the items listed. Is there discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right. Motion carries 7-0. We'll start at 13. Consider approval of a resolution authorizing application for State Homeland Security Program Law Enforcement Terrorism Prevention Activities Grant Funds in the amount of $409,431. Councilmember Zuniga.
Oh, Tobias pulled it.
Tobias. MTMZ.
MTMZ.
Sorry, I'm getting
All
lost.
right, it's all right. Don't worry about it.
MPT.
Everybody forgets every now and then. Hey, Tobias, okay, could you just give the residents what the grants for the $409,000 would be for? That you're wanting to possibly go for?
This is going to be for the record, this is Will Paistabosh, Emergency Management Coordinator for the City of Kyle. That grant is going to be applied towards an armored vehicle that's going to be used for the regional SWAT team.
Okay. By chance, do we have a number of how many deployments of SWAT that we had last year? This is basically to, if it goes through, just basically approval for an application process for grant funding for this, but
Correct.
just to get the residents to understand what this would be for.
Good evening, Jeff Barnett, Chief of Police for the record. Although I do not have their specific numbers, we're a member of the regional SWAT team that covers all of Hays County. We respond into Caldwell and Blanco counties as well. I really don't want to misquote. I know we're in the 20 range of call-outs. It's probably more than that. So, yeah, and that's call-outs, that's high-risk warrant services. This type of vehicle can also be used for high water rescue and some other things too. So it's a multi-purpose vehicle that would be shared by that team as they serve all of Hays County and our partnering counties.
Yep. I think one of those was used during the 2015 flood when they had to evacuate all those students from Travis Elementary.
Yes, sir. They use them in the high water rescues because they're elevated vehicles with larger tires, and they can absolutely get into high water stuff. They can rescue people in dangerous situations from a multitude of emergencies.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So with that, Mayor, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve agenda item number 13.
Second.
All right, motion by Councilmember Zuniga, seconded by Councilmember Parsley, that we approve agenda item 13. Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0. Agenda item 14, this one's Zuniga's. Consider approval of a resolution authorizing application for criminal justice grant program, Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Program funds in the amount of $69,599.97. Councilmember Zuniga.
Same question, Will. Could we, I guess, what is it we're looking for with this criminal justice assistance grant?
All right, this item is going to be a portable spectrometer. PD currently relies on, I don't want to call them antiquated, they're the existing methods that we use to test substances found in the field. They are, you take an amount of the substance, put it into another chemical, crack a bottle, and a reagent makes it change color. So you're losing substance, you're exposed to it because you have to handle it. When they're encountering things that they don't know how to test it, they call out the fire department to get the hazmat team to come out with their spectrometer. It's apparent that this is something PD needs. It is an officer safety issue because you don't want to handle unknown powders out in the field. That's just a good way to get injured or to get sick.
Is the fire department mass spectrometer also the portable MX980? I guess this is what you're looking for?
Yeah, I'm looking for the MX980 on the recommendation of RPD. I don't know what the model is that the fire department has.
Right. So this is really my area of expertise. So it's a ionization mass spectrometer. The company that makes these, I think they're still very new. So they're within 10 years. I think they only have 1,700 of them out in the field that are deployed. So it won't be used to stand up like in legal courts, right? Because it's not a validated instrument. It's just a screening methodology.
That sounds more like a PD question. I couldn't tell you if it's forensically qualified or not off the top of my head. Also, I don't know this is the model that we're going to be seeking. This is just what I base the amounts off of.
Yes, sir. The device will be used in the field, but we still send the substance to a state-certified lab for use in court. Yes, sir. So it's one tool that gets us further down the process in the field and keeps our officers safe, but we do still back that up with a state-certified lab inspection.
Right. This is instrumentation that we've been wanting for years, and I think finally it's got into the technology where it can be made portable.
Yes, sir.
And I also like the Aviation type, which is more research but still capable to do this kind of testing. So with that, I'm just glad to see that our department is going to get something like this and will utilize it.
Yes, sir, and help keep our officers safe as they deal with different chemicals out in the field, one of which could be fentanyl or other things that are dangerous.
Sure.
To get on your skin so much as to test, these things will be very helpful, so thank you. Yes, sir.
I do want to clarify, these are applications, so.
These are applications,
These are
right.
applications, so
But-
we're hopeful.
But even, I'd love to see this one on a budget.
Excellent. I hope I get to come back and ask you guys to approve the acceptance of an award.
Sounds good.
Thank you. With that, I would like to make a motion to approve this agenda item.
Second.
All right, motion
14.
by Councilmember Zuniga, seconded by Councilmember Parsley, that we approve agenda item 14. Is there a discussion on the motion? Councilmember Parsley.
I do have, first, I want to say that it made me so happy to see so many grant applications in here. I think it's the first time that I see so many, and so that's very exciting. Is there a priority list that we have with the items that we need when we're talking about like the criminal justice grants? Is there any specific items that we would need to tackle, or is there like a priority thing that we think this is what we want to apply the funds for?
When a grant becomes available, when I'm aware of it, and I have an idea of when the cycles are, And for this case, I asked PD, hey, what is it that we need? What do you want that we've never been able to get before? And I can reach out and try to get it. Last year, we asked for a whole cybersecurity suite. Unfortunately, that grant did not get approved on our behalf, but hopefully this time we'll have a bit more luck. Same thing with hazard mitigation grant program, where I finished applying for that. That application went out at the beginning of the month based on your all's approval late last year. And that was the same deal. I asked city management, I asked the different departments, hey, what do we need from this program? I went to go talk to CapCog, to the state officials, to figure out what's viable, what is something the city of our size can get, and focused my energy on those applications, and we should be successful in that regard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0. All right, next up, agenda item 18, consider approval of a resolution authorizing the application for the United States Department of Transportation through the Consolidated Rail Infrastructure and Safety Improvements Grant Program for fiscal year 2024 in the amount of $23 million and change. Mayor, Councilmember Tobias.
Just call me Toby.
Toby Toe.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you, Mayor. Again, okay, so over the weekend, we're looking at the agenda item. I did some research on this consolidation infrastructure safety. It all falls in line with what we're trying to shoot for from the legislative program, correct? From the federal priorities like infrastructure and transportation, for grants, and to piggyback off of Councilmember Parsley, glad to see that we're looking at investing in putting for applications for grants. So this one here is basically, the purpose of this program was to invest in a wide range of projects in the United States to improve railroad safety, correct?
That's correct.
And so the projects eligible for funding is deployment of railroad safety technology, other things like highway railroad grade crossings, also for preparation for emergency plans within communications, where hazardous materials are, other resources, research I did was, as of October, the FRA has recorded over 742 incidents for trail derailments in 2023, okay? And just recently, I saw on ABC News, they did a story on the one-year anniversary of the publicized trail derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, where the train caught fire and particulate matter was in the air and it contaminated the waters. And following the disaster, the Ohio governor issued an evacuation order for the residents in the area. Other things I had was which states has the most derailments? Well, Illinois, Texas, and Pennsylvania. We have over 10,500 miles of railroads here in the state of Texas. So as we're talking about improving our infrastructure, getting these grants, public safety, I think it's a great idea that we really look into possibly getting some of these grants on that end. And also, most of these grant lifestyles are broken down into 3 stages: pre-award, the award, and post-award. So, sir, would you kind of just briefly go over what you feel or what you think how we can get funding on this grant if it goes through, or some of your feedback?
Sure. You covered a lot of, it was a great recap of this grant, but like you said, it's mainly, the scope of it is the efficiency, reliability, and safety around railways. I think all the different factors that we talked about when we were talking about the legislative program will play into that, but also something that you brought out, the safety of the railways, not only here, but in the surrounding area, something that we definitely could look at as far as how many accidents have happened, and even Texas being, I did not know that, Texas being the second worst as far as accidents and stuff, all plays into this, as well as there's an aspect of this grant, from what I understand, that's more traffic congestion and mobility. So as far as Kohlers and the railway right here, we feel like that plays into it as well. So I think with that, as well as getting some support from our regional and state partners, I think will help in the submission of this grant.
Well, thank you very much, because I really appreciate you taking the effort to wanting to look at this specific type of grant, because obviously the train does go through the heart of the city and it goes north and south and so forth. So it's a great idea that we could possibly look into that grant. So with that, Mayor, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve agenda item number 18.
All right, motion by Councilmember Tobias, seconded by Councilmember Parsley, to approve agenda item 18. Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, sir.
All right, next up, agenda item 22, consider approval of task order number 1 to Quiddity Engineers LLC for professional engineering services for permanent generators at the city's water system facilities and City Hall in an amount of $129,290. Ms. Parsley.
I just wanted to know if we had budgeted for this and where is it coming from?
Yes, it will come out of our water impact fee budget.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering if it's like wastewater or what budget. And then for 23, can you show me exactly what is going to be the area that they will be servicing and what is the scope of work that they will have?
For item 23?
Mhm.
Did you want to act on 22 first?
Yes,
Because that'll be a
then can
different
I,
speaker.
I would like to make a motion to approve item 22.
Second.
I had a
All right.
question about 22.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Parsley, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem that we approve agenda item 22. Is there discussion on the motion? Councilmember Zuniga.
Sorry, Amber. I did have a quick question. What is the critical infrastructure at City Hall that requires that generator? Just because I know that there's very few power outages. This
AC.
is a pretty good building.
Well, actually.
Now, the wastewater pumps and stuff, I totally agree with.
Sure.
Now, this one, I'm just thinking if it's just a want.
Marco can probably
It-
speak better to this.
It's
and-
the IT, it's
Yes,
the
it's
servers,
the
it's the tier
server.
1 systems that operate out of here, billing systems, email, all the web servers, things like that that power all the systems across the city. That's the critical infrastructure.
I told we have a very short window. Once we lose power to City Hall, we have a very short window to make sure we've got it backed up. And so it's a good idea to keep this building with redundant power.
How are you going to support the, never mind.
All right, any further discussion?
I'm going to vote no on that.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Okay, and then for
Did I hear a
23.
No, no.
Okay, motion carries 6-1. Did you say it? All right.
No to the servers.
All right, agenda item,
Weren't you asking for us to like open City Hall as a cooling center?
Yeah.
How are you going to supply the
all right.
AC?
it's-
for
all right,
There's a
moving-
very
hang-
low,
all right, hang on,
there's a
moving on.
low
It's
probability
after
we
10.
will
Let's
lose
go.
power at this City Hall.
Consider
There's
approval
low
of the
probability.
city manager to execute an amendment to the agreement between the city of Collin and Brightview. Ms. Parsley.
I just wanted to know the scope of work. What are they going to be doing and what areas are going to be serviced by them? And
Sure.
is this like, I know that this has been brought before. Is this not something that our Parks Department can handle, right? Or maintenance?
So this is a longstanding contract, Rosie Truelove, Director of Administrative Services. This is a longstanding contract that the city has had with Brightview for the past 3 years. This is monthly maintenance of a set number of corridors. If you flip to the next couple of slides. Oh, it's me?
I think you can hit the screen, Rosie.
I
You
hit the
got-
screen.
Touch the screen. Don't hit it.
Okay, I see it. I see it. There we go. All right, she can be taught. This is the list of the corridors that we have in here, and it's just basic maintenance of the right-of-way in these corridors. So the bulk of the services here were just the monthly charges that occurred after the contract had lapsed. This will close out the contract. We'll be bringing forward a new contract at the next council meeting to pick up these services. Any intervening work will be done by park staff.
Okay, thank you. I would like to make a motion to approve item 23.
Second, motion by Councilmember Parsley, second by the mayor that we approve agenda item 23. Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0. Next up, agenda item 27, consider approval of a resolution authorizing the purchase and closing of a 26.607 acre parcel of land, more or less, on Caraway for Kohlers and BB Extension. Ms. Schmeitz.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. Amber Schmeitz, Assistant City Manager for the record. This is in reference to the Caraway Tract development. We are bringing forward the earnest money contract to purchase the right-of-way necessary. So we, the city, entered into a development agreement with the Caraways, Transwestern, and Newquest, the developers of the property. The DA contemplated that the city would enter into this earnest money contract with Transwestern and Newquest after the approval and execution of the DA. And tonight we are requesting approval from the council of the resolution and earnest money contract. The property being purchased is about 26 acres of land, more or less. It's for the extension of Kohler's Crossing and the reconstruction of BB Road. The purchase price is $5.5 million plus closing costs, and all of those costs will be paid for as part of the 2022 road bonds program. The earnest money contract will be executed upon Transwestern and Newquest closing on the property described in the DA. The earnest money contract provides that the closing for the city purchase of the 26 plus acres takes place no later than 180 days from the effective date of the DA. The DA provided 180 days for closing between the city and the developer to ensure that Transwestern and Newquest have enough time to close on the property with the Caraways. And the closing can happen earlier if all terms of the earnest money contract are met and the city, Transwestern, and Newquest are all in agreement. And here is the survey of the property that the city is asking to purchase. Any questions?
All right, thank you. And this is something we've already voted on. This is just fulfilling that. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Councilmember Tobias.
All right, just real quick, I just want to thank Brian and Travis and Amber for y'all's response on my email on the questions about this. I really appreciate the feedback and the understanding of why we're doing this. And of course, it is coming out of the funds from the 2022 bond. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve agenda item number 27.
Second. Motion by Councilmember Tobias, second by the mayor. Is there, we approve agenda item 27. Is there discussion on the motion? Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I just want to say this project's taken a long time to come about, and just want to thank all the staff for their due diligence, everybody that worked on this, and this is a very important part of infrastructure that we're bringing to our city, so looking forward to this project finally, this road being built.
Yeah. Yeah, I know I've already said it once, but I just want to say that there's definitely an uptick in the just the way this city is going about its business. So it's noticed, it's appreciated, and I'm excited for the future. So confidence level is rising. I'll do this, but it's rising. So thank you all for instilling confidence in us as a council. So, all right. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0. Next up, agenda item 28, consider approval of a resolution approving stormwater facility site maintenance agreement, a declaration of drainage and detention easement, a special warranty deed for Lennar Homes and Texas Land Construction LTD for approximately 23.471 acres, more or less. Ms. Sines.
Mayor and Council, Paige Sines for the record. This item is the culmination of agreements that were entered in 2020 and 2019. The Regional Stormwater Facilities Cost Sharing Agreement, which was entered into in December 15th, 2020, and addendum number 5 to the Plum Creek Development Agreement provide for the construction of a regional detention pond to serve properties located within Plum Creek Development. The cost-sharing agreement provides for the regional detention pond to be conveyed to and maintained by the city, with the property owner associations for the mixed-use area of the Plum Creek development and the residential association within that development paying their pro rata share of the maintenance costs. Construction of that regional detention pond freed up use of a 23-acre parcel owned by Lennar, and Lennar agreed to convey that property to the city. The agreements provide for certain restrictions to be placed on the properties to preserve the drainage function. There's a drainage function that exists on the regional detention pond and a drainage channel tract that connects the regional detention pond site to what we call the multi-use tract. It's the 23-acre tract. So there are restrictions that preserve that drainage function, since the primary purpose of that regional detention pond is a detention pond for those properties to drain to. In addition to that, the property will be used for ball fields. The properties form the land that is slated for construction of the regional sportsplex project that was approved by the voters in the November 3rd, 2020 park bond, with matching funds between the city and the county. The resolution approves the stormwater facilities maintenance agreement. The deeds and the easements described therein in a final form to be approved by city's legal counsel authorizes the city manager to execute those documents as well as any others to accomplish the conveyance of the properties to give the effect to the agreements and to convey the regional sportsplex site to the city. Your options are approve or deny the resolution. The recommendation is to approve.
All right, thank you, Ms.
Any
Sines.
questions?
Anybody have any questions or comments? Councilmember Zuniga.
Thank you, Paige and Brian, for answering my questions today. So I just want to give clarification. What would be like an expected yearly cost to maintain the detention pond?
That is not information that I have.
Based on other ponds, I mean, based on other, is this just a larger scale?
I don't have a precise number for you, Councilmember Zuniga. You know, I think in many cases, just maintaining it can be pretty low expense
It seems-
stuff.
right.
Yeah, it's an open, dry pond, you know,
Mhm.
it's a mowing, simple kinds of things, keeping, as we talked about earlier with Mr. Wilder, is, you know,
Mhm.
keeping the channels clean, things like that we're already doing.
Okay.
I don't think there's significant expenses there, but there are some, and unfortunately, I don't have a good number for you. It would be shared. There's a pro rata agreement that whatever use of the detention pond is used by the HOAs and other users, they have to pay their pro rata share of those costs. So the city would perform the work, and then we would bill those entities for their share of the cost, whatever this might be.
So if the users change over time, is this contract in perpetuity to hold only those users on the contract for collection of charge? So if Lennar changes and sells it over, will we still be able to collect from the secondary buyer these charges?
Apologies for not letting you to finish your
No,
question.
I jumped pretty fast.
The buyers, the parties to the contract are going to be the property owner associations. Those are ultimately the entities that are obligated to pay those. And so those are entities that are long-term, more long-term than the developer. They take the place of the developer. And they will have restrictive covenants that require them to collect funds from all the people that live within the association to help fund these drainage expenses. And they will have a board that operates. So in a
Mhm.
residential community and then a mixed-use community in a thriving area,
Right.
those are going to be ongoing, kind of long-lived entities.
I know that what's prohibited is pretty intense, but I do like the idea of collecting water there somehow underground, Brian. I think that's a good purpose of that. So is there any way we could look at that?
Yes, sir.
I know it's already been built, right? But
Well, we're looking at trying, as we look at using the Sportsplex, one of the things we've talked about with the task force, the council task force, is how we could perhaps store that water underneath fields and use it again for irrigation or other uses. I'm certainly not an expert in that, but those are some of the things that we've been talking about with that task force of how we could do it. So we can bring forward ideas as that process moves forward, the design.
and is this going to be paid out of the TERS maintenance agreements?
For the detention facility?
Yes.
Or is this just the
probably.
streets and public works?
Yes, it would be the TERS. That's where it should be budgeted. It's all in that district.
Well, I'm glad to hear it won't be a very huge expense just to maintain it. I was afraid
We'll
we'd
wait
get-
till we're done with it.
I was afraid we'd be
'cause
stuck
I'm
with
pretty
the
sure
budget.
I'm gonna want some fields on it.
Well, I was afraid the city would be on the hook for large fees.
Yeah, I think if we start building soccer fields and those kinds of things, there's a different maintenance level for that as opposed to just the maintaining the drainage pond, right?
Okay.
Right, and the drainage function is paid for by the POAs. The city's recreational use and those
We pay
functions are
for.
paid for by the city.
Right.
And you said no liability to the city for flooding from the drainage.
It's not any, you're gonna own property and it's not any, this does not create any more liability than what you already have when you own property and develop city property.
Okay, thank you. That is very good to hear.
Motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 28.
All right, motion by Councilmember Zuniga, seconded by Councilmember Parsley to approve agenda item 28. Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. All right, motion carries 7-0. Final item, agenda item 29, consider directing city manager to waive permit fees for the Texas Ramp Project, a nonprofit to install code-compliant residential ADA ramps at homes of residents who are financially and physically in need. I had a gentleman, I've heard of the Texas Ramp Project before. They've been active in our community. They are a nonprofit organization that installs wheelchair ramps to low-income, older adults and people with disabilities identified by local healthcare providers. They use exclusively volunteer labor, and they have about 6 projects in the city that they're wanting to build. They said they want to build them code compliant. They want to have the inspections done, but the permit fees are $150 to build these ramps for these folks, and it's against their bylaws to pay for those types of services. They don't normally operate in cities that charge permit fees for ramps. So they've agreed that if we would waive the fees, they would be able to put these ramps in for these folks who can't afford it with all volunteer labor. And I just wanted to ask if y'all would be willing to direct the city manager to waive those fees. Councilor Parsley.
When we talk about waiving the alcohol permit fees, and there was such a discussion, this is the kind of fees that with my eyes closed, I would be like, yes, absolutely, let's waive it. So I would like to make a motion to approve item 29.
Second.
All right, motion by Councilmember Parsley, second by Mayor Pro Tem. We approve agenda item 29. Is there discussion on the motion?
Yeah, this is actually a great, this is a great thing we're doing today because there's a lot of people in this community that are mobile disabled or challenged, and we want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to make sure we're taking care of everybody in our community.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, sir. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Motion to adjourn. All right, we're adjourned. Thank you all, everyone.